Hello there, and welcome back to the Sleep Science. Tonight you're not curling into bed in some tiny apartment with the glow of your phone as your only campfire. No, tonight, your dreams take you back about 200 million years, to a world where the air itself seems thicker, where cicadas the size of your hand drone somewhere in the dark canopy, and where every step could shake loose the history of life itself. You probably won't survive this, by the way, but it's fine, because you're technically asleep. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The dream opens with sound first, a low, rolling rumble that could be thunder or something moving through a distant valley. You can't tell. When your eyes adjust, you're standing ankle-deep in dew-slick ferns and the air smells like wet clay and lightning. The sky above you is pale green, bruised with clouds that look heavy enough to sag. It's humid in a way you've never felt before, like the whole world has forgotten the concept of dryness. You take one step forward and hear a crunch, not of twigs, but of shells maybe, or the delicate remains of something that once wriggled. Your dream self hesitates. This isn't the kind of forest you grew up imagining. There are no birds here yet, no song to punctuate the silence, only the insect symphony of the Triassic, buzzes, clicks, and the occasional unsettling chirr from something you can't see. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a deeper vibration hums through the ground, the way subwoofers shake a floor during an after-party. That's when you realise this forest is awake, not metaphorically, truly. The ferns shift as if breathing, cicadas unfurling like green tongues under the humid air, and through that slow rhythm you sense something colossal moving, a creature the size of a house, its weight pressing history itself into the soil. The first dinosaurs weren't the monsters you've seen on movie posters. They were awkward, smaller, finding their footing, literally, on land that was still figuring out how to be solid. Around 230 million years ago, in the late Triassic, the continents were still fused together into the supercontinent Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole like one colossal bruise on Earth's skin. Deserts sprawled across its centre, storms raged at its edges. You watch it from above now, as the dream shifts, Pangaea rotating slowly beneath you, like a cracked pottery globe. You drift downward again, landing beside a river that smells faintly of sulphur. It's here that you meet Earaptor, a small two-legged creature about as tall as your knee. It tilts its head, curious but unafraid. Its hands, yes, hands, grasp a struggling insect before the mouth darts forward, quick as a lizard's tongue. There's a flash of teeth and a tiny crunch. Dinner is served. Paleontologists found fossils of Earaptor in Argentina's Esquigualasto Formation, one of the earliest known dinosaur beds. Historians still argue whether Earaptor should truly be called a dinosaur, or just a close cousin, a transitional oddity that straddled two worlds. Either way, it's adorable in a slightly homicidal way. The forest around you trembles as something else approaches. Your body tightens instinctively, though this is only a dream. The trees part and a shadow passes, long neck, sweeping tail, the slow-motion majesty of an herbivore whose bulk bends branches like reeds. Plateosaurus, maybe, its nostrils steaming in the dawn air. It moves with the confidence of an animal that knows nothing. Nothing larger hunts it yet. You can feel the ground flex beneath your feet, the pulse of muscle and bone beneath scales that shimmer faintly with mud. The world feels half-finished. That's the thing. The mountains in the distance still look molten, their slopes steaming with rain that hisses instead of drips. Rivers braid across plains with no permanent course. Everything is in flux. It's like wandering through a planet still under construction. You crouch beside the riverbank, your reflection warping across the water's shimmering skin. For a moment, you see not yourself, but a blur of scales and claws, as if the dream were offering a glimpse of what it remembers. Behind you, Earaptor chirps, a short, almost bird-like note, and scurries up a rock. And that's when it happens. Thunder, unmistakably this time, except the sky's clear. The ground ripples, and the air shakes with a shockwave so low you feel it in your lungs. An early volcanic eruption. Pangaea is restless tonight. Ash begins to fall, soft, warm, almost to snow-like. You lift your hand, catching the fine grey dust on your palm. Every grain of it will someday harden into stone, trapping footprints, bones, and plants within it like an album of time. Somewhere in that ash, the DNA of survival writes itself quietly. You move through the haze, your feet crunching through brittle leaves that haven't evolved into what you'd recognize as leaves yet. The dream shifts again. You're standing on a cliff overlooking an endless plain. Far below, herds of early dinosaurs move like schools of fish across a sea of ferns. They're all shapes you can barely categorize, part lizard, part bird, part miracle. In the dream's strange clarity, you can see the world's first experiments in dominance. Some creatures try height, others speed, still others brute force. Evolution here feels like a competition without rules. One moment you see a Coelophysis sprinting through reeds, all sinew and toothy grin. The next, a lumbering Desmatosuchus with its back plated like medieval armour. And amidst it all, insects the size of small dogs buzz lazily overhead. One lands nearby, a dragonfly, Meganeura, its wings translucent but wide enough to cast a shadow over your hands. Fun fact, scientists think insects back then grew so large because oxygen levels were higher than today. More oxygen, bigger bugs, lucky you. You flick at the dragonfly out of instinct and it darts away with a sound like paper tearing. For a moment, silence returns. Then you notice a low clicking sound, rhythmic, almost mechanical. Somewhere in the dark reeds, two Herosaurus circle each other. You can tell by the tension that this isn't a dance. It's a duel. They lunge, fast, almost invisible. A blur of claws and teeth, a splash of muddy water. Then it's over. One collapses, the victor standing above it, chest heaving, eyes glassy but triumphant. You turn away before the rest happens, not out of disgust, but respect for the primal efficiency of it all. You keep walking. Somewhere behind you the volcano still rumbles, and lightning flickers along its rim. That's when you remember, this isn't a safe world. Not yet. The continents are splitting, seas rising, air filling with volcanic gas. You're walking through extinction and birth at once. The dream dips again, pulling you below ground. It's dark, but not empty. Here lie bones, tiny, fragile, encased in sediment. One, in particular, gleams faintly in your dreamlight, a jawbone no longer than your finger. This is how paleontologists work, really, decoding whispers from rock, building entire empires of understanding from teeth and dust. You trace the bone gently. The texture is smooth, almost like polished marble. You imagine the creature that owned it, its heart beating, lungs pumping somewhere between reptile and bird. Maybe it didn't survive the eruption above. Maybe its descendants did. That's the poetry of it. Extinction and evolution sharing the same heartbeat. You surface again, emerging into twilight. The forest glows gold in the fading light, and the first stars of a Triassic night appear. Unfamiliar constellations, but oddly comforting. Somewhere out there, the same stars will one day shine over human cities. A warm wind sweeps past, carrying the faint smell of sap and sulphur. You sit down on a rock, feeling its warmth seep through you. The night insects begin their chorus again, ancient, hypnotic, like a lullaby written before language existed. For a fleeting moment, you feel completely still. This is the calm between ages, the hush before the dinosaurs truly rise. And though you know, somewhere in your waking mind, that this world will crumble and reform 100 times, right now it feels eternal. You look toward the horizon. The volcano's glow pulses like a heartbeat. In the distance, Plateosaurus silhouettes against the orange sky, tail swinging gently. It's peaceful, almost domestic in a prehistoric way. Then you feel a small vibration beneath your palm. The rock beneath you is shifting, cracking. It's not an earthquake, more like the planet itself turning over in its sleep. You close your eyes, listening to it breathe. The Triassic hum fades, the dream deepens, and somewhere in that slow drift toward darker sleep you sense the next stage beginning to stir. Morning creeps into the dream the way mist curls into a valley, slow, weightless, almost shy. When you open your eyes, the Triassic night has melted into something softer. Fog pools around your ankles, and each step you take leaves behind an impression that fills instantly with water. The air hums again, but this time it's gentler, a low chorus of insects tuning up for another day that could last anywhere from 18 to 22 hours, because back then, the Earth spun a little faster. The world was literally younger, and you can feel it in every molecule. You take a breath, and it tastes like crushed leaves and minerals. Somewhere to your left, a brook babbles beneath giant horsetails taller than buildings. Their stems sway with a wet, squeaky rhythm like rubber balloons brushing together. The entire forest seems suspended between sleep and wakefulness, like you've caught the planet before it's decided what kind of life it wants to host. You walk until the mist parts just enough for you to see them. Prints. Enormous ones. They curve away across the muddy plain, perfectly preserved in the half-dried sediment. You kneel and place your hand beside one, and your palm fits inside the toe mark as neatly as a coin in a slot. Each print is three-toed, claw-tipped, pressed deep enough that you can almost feel the creature's weight echoing through time. These are growliter tracks, at least that's what later paleontologists would call them, naming not the creature itself, but the footprint type. A funny quirk of science. Sometimes we know the trace before we know the tracer. Historians still argue whether the first grallator prints were left by Quelophysis, Dilophosaurus, or some entirely unknown cousin that has yet to be found. All you know standing here is that someone was alive enough to walk this path, and that their footfalls have waited hundreds of millions of years just to be noticed by your dreaming self. You start to follow them. The ground squelches underfoot, warm mud slipping between your toes. The mist swirls and reforms into shapes, tails, wings, shadows of things long gone. You half expect one of those shapes to solidify, to turn into something breathing and watchful, but they dissolve every time you blink. To your right, the landscape opens into a shallow basin where the fog hangs heavier. It's not just vapour, it smells faintly of sulphur and salt. You realise you're near a volcanic lake, one of countless craters that dot the Triassic landscape. Heat shimmers above it. Bubbles rise and burst with tiny, impatient sighs. The surface is streaked with rainbow film, minerals catching the new light. You crouch again. A small creature darts across your reflection. A procolophon, turtle-faced and grumpy, its squat body balanced on sturdy legs. It pauses to glare at you, or maybe at its own mirror image, before scooping up a beetle the size of a walnut. It crunches audibly, with the kind of satisfaction you recognise immediately, because you make that same noise eating chips at midnight. Beyond the lake, the ground rises into low ridges, and scattered among them you notice strange formations, twisted columns of stone like fossilised trees caught mid-sway, except they are not fossils yet. They're living lepidodendron, ancient relatives of club mosses, their bark patterned like alligator skin. You brush your fingers over one, and it feels waxy, slick with dew. This forest is more vertical than you expect, everything reaching desperately for the dim sunlight filtered through haze. A sudden noise breaks your reverie, a deep rhythmic drumming like someone thumping a hollow log. It's coming from the west, beyond the fog wall. You move toward it, cautiously. As you get closer, the sound resolves into something stranger, a series of low calls, almost conversational. And then you see them. Two Plateosaurus again, the same long-necked creatures from last night's vision, but now bathed in morning glow. Their skin glistens in damp bronze hues, each movement slow but deliberate. One lowers its head, scooping ferns with a tongue thick as a garden hose. The other watches, tail twitching. You stay still. It's easy to imagine them as silent giants, but the air vibrates with their low-frequency rumbles. Scientists think many large dinosaurs could communicate through infrasound, deep tones humans can feel but not hear. Maybe that's what drew you here, the faint hum your dream brain translated into curiosity. Beneath their feet you see more footprints being made, massive impressions pressed into the soft mud, each one instantly filling with lake water. You realise you're watching fossils being born. The thought makes you dizzy, like standing at the edge of eternity and seeing it wink. A light rain starts, barely noticeable at first until the droplets grow fat enough to tap against your shoulders. The mist thickens, wrapping you in its gauze. Everything blurs. You blink hard, and when your vision clears, the Plateosaurus are gone. Only the footprints remain, perfect, glistening with rainwater. You walk backward in time again, it seems. The forest around you subtly changes. The air grows cooler, the plants shorter. You can feel the clock turning back a few million years, to an era when the dinosaurs were still blending with their ancestors. On a nearby rock, a euparkeria basks under the weak sun, a small crocodile-like creature that occasionally rears onto two legs, as if testing the future. Scientists believe this little experimenter was one of the earliest relatives of true dinosaurs. You watch it balance for a heartbeat before flopping back down, unimpressed with its own innovation. Classic scientist energy, really. Nearby, you notice strange markings carved into the muddy bank, not footprints, scratch lines, deep and parallel like clawed fingers breaking through the sludge. You crouch and examine them. This could be feeding behaviour or maybe territory marking. Historians still argue whether such patterns are evidence of hunting or mating displays. Personally, you suspect boredom. If you were a Triassic reptile with no Netflix and no thumbs, you'd doodle in the mud too. As the mist swirls higher, sunlight starts breaking through in watery shafts. The air sparkles with suspended moisture, and suddenly you can see the outlines of hundreds of tracks overlapping across the plain. It's a crossroads of species, a snapshot of motion. Large and small, predator and prey, herbivore and omnivore, all their lives intersecting in footprints that vanish into distance. It's haunting in a beautiful way. You kneel again and notice something smaller this time. A perfect impression no bigger than your hand, 3 delicate toes pressed deep. Beside it, another nearly identical but slightly larger. Maybe an adult and juvenile walking together. You trace the tiny path with your fingers and feel a weird ache in your chest. Something between awe and loneliness. It's the tenderness of deep time, the realization that care, companionship, maybe even family, existed long before humans coined the words for them. The air grows still again. Mist curls tighter around you, as if reluctant to let you leave. You turn in slow circles, trying to memorize every ridge and puddle, every ripple of sand that might someday become rock. Somewhere behind you, thunder murmurs, not violent, just a reminder that volcanoes never truly sleep. And then you hear water. Stronger this time, a torrent. You climb a small ridge and find yourself staring down at a river in mid-flood, tearing through the valley like molten glass. Uprooted trees tumble end over end, and with them half the hillside slides into the churning current. Within seconds, the plain you just walked across is underwater, footprints vanishing one by one beneath the brown foam. It hits you that this is how fossilization often begins, not in preservation, but in destruction. Floods cover the tracks, burying them under layers of sediment, sealing them off from air and decay. What feels like loss is actually memory being written in code, only time can read. You step back from the ridge as spray drenches your face, lightning flashes across the grey sky, and for an instant the world turns to silver. When the thunder follows, it sounds less like a storm and more like applause, ancient, patient applause for the strange persistence of life. The rain eases, the river quiets. By the time the mist thins again, the plain is unrecognisable. You make your way down cautiously, your feet sinking into the new mud, still warm from the flood. The air smells of iron and ozone. Somewhere nearby you spot movement, a herd of small bipedal creatures no taller than your waist. They move in coordinated bursts, chirping softly, snouts dipping to pick at seeds or insects. They look like miniature raptors, delicate and skittish. One lifts its head, eyes locking on you for half a heartbeat before darting away. You realise that in this dream you're something new, an observer who doesn't belong, yet the land allows you to wander. Maybe because dreamers, like fossils, are temporary impressions too. You follow the little herd until the fog thins into sunlight again. The ground beneath you begins to firm, drying under the newborn heat. Cracks form, spiderwebbing across the clay. You look back at your own footprints, already hardening. Maybe if the dream were patient enough, your tracks would fossilise beside the dinosaurs. Above you, a flock of primitive pterosaurs takes flight, their wings translucent and veined like stained glass. They circle once, twice, then disappear into the whitening sky. The mist lifts completely, revealing the full sprawl of the Triassic landscape. Forests, volcanoes, rivers snaking toward unseen oceans. It's a view no human eye ever truly saw, yet somehow it feels like home. You exhale slowly, tasting salt on your lips. The sound of the world settles into a deep, steady rhythm again. the pulse of the planet itself alive and unfinished. And as the sun swells higher, turning the wet clay golden, you realise you've been walking in the first footsteps of all who would come after. The mist dissolves entirely, leaving you bathed in ancient light. And just before the dream tilts into something new, you think you hear it. A soft sigh from the earth below, almost like gratitude. The sunlight fades again, not suddenly but in slow motion, like someone dimming the world's brightness knob, until only a honey-coloured afterglow remains. You feel the air change, thicker, older, heavier with the scent of algae and rain. The dream has rewound itself. Gone are the confident three-toed prints of dinosaurs. You've slipped backward into an era before they had even grown their signature teeth, before the concept of dinosaur had fully assembled inside evolution's head. You stand on the edge of a swamp that hums like an orchestra tuning up. Dragonflies skim the surface, wings catching glints of dying light. Something croaks, deep, resonant, like a tuba underwater. It's a chorus of amphibians, distant ancestors of frogs, toads, and whatever else later decided to leap from mud to glory. The ground squelches beneath you. Every step releases the sharp metallic smell of decomposing plants. This is the late Permian turning into the early Triassic, a hinge moment in life's story. Most species that once ruled the Earth have already vanished. The Great Dying, scientists call it, the largest extinction event in recorded geological history. About 90% of marine life and 70% of land species winked out when volcanoes in what's now Siberia unleashed enough carbon dioxide to nearly choke the planet. Historians still argue whether an asteroid also helped finish the job, or whether Earth simply coughed itself clean. You glance upward at a sky streaked with ash and violet haze. The sun is there, but faint, like a coin seen through murky glass, yet life, stubborn as ever, stirs. Out of the muck crawl survivors, reptiles with sprawling limbs, lungs built for gasping, eyes that don't blink often enough. They look tired but determined, and honestly same. Near your feet, something wiggles. You crouch, brushing away slime, and find a creature no longer than your hand. It's a Lystrosaurus, part reptile, part mammal ancestor, all attitude. Its face looks like a bulldog that's just realised it owns the swamp. Tusks protrude from its mouth, though teeth feels like an overstatement. They're more like blunt chisels for cropping roots. Lystrosaurus dominated this bleak new world. Its fossils have been found across Africa, India and Antarctica, proving those continents were once neighbours' neighbours. You lift your head and imagine the massive puzzle of Pangaea locking together above you. The Lystrosaurus snorts and waddles away, unimpressed by your silent admiration. You follow its tracks through the mud until the ground firms up, becoming cracked clay. In the distance, the swamp opens into flat plains dotted with cycads and seed ferns. The plants here look awkward, like prototypes. Even the air feels half-invented. You pause to take it in. Evolution isn't glamorous here, it's gritty. This is survival stripped of drama, where the winners are the ones who can breathe just a bit longer. You can almost hear the planet sighing with effort, each breath a gamble. You reach a cluster of shallow pools shimmering with oily colours. Tiny fish-like things dart beneath the surface. One leaps, flashing a mouthful of nubs instead of teeth. These are early actinopterygians, ray-finned fish that will someday evolve jaws capable of crushing coral, but for now they nibble timidly at algae mats. The water itself smells faintly of vinegar. Dissolved volcanic gases bubble up from below, making the pools hiss softly, like soda poured onto hot pavement. To your left, a ridge rises, a jumble of volcanic rock streaked with iron veins. Climbing it feels like scaling the planet's scar tissue. When you reach the top, the view steals your breath. Spread below you is an entire valley carpeted with green and grey, steam rising from distant vents. This is where land animals first started claiming dominance after the extinction. You can almost sense the blueprint of future ecosystems taking shape. Here, a burrower, there a grazer, somewhere unseen, a lurking carnivore testing its luck. A shape catches your eye, a sleek figure moving through the reeds. Its body glides low, tail snaking behind. It's not quite a lizard, not quite a mammal. Its name will someday be Thrinaxodon, one of the earliest synodonts, the lineage that leads straight to you. It pauses, nostrils flaring, and you realize it's breathing through a secondary palate, separating food and air, a small innovation that allows mammals to chew and breathe simultaneously. Imagine evolving multitasking. You squat quietly, watching it dig. Its tiny forelimbs work like mechanical shovels, tossing dirt backward in rhythmic bursts. Scientists discovered that Thrinaxodon sometimes shared its burrows with other species, like amphibians, suggesting a peculiar kind of prehistoric roommate situation. Historians still argue whether that was mutualism, opportunism, or pure accident. Either way, you can't help picturing it leaving passive-aggressive scratch marks near the tunnel entrance. Clean up your molting skin. The wind shifts. Heat rolls over the ridge in waves, carrying the sour tang of sulfur. You look westward and see a faint orange glow on the horizon. The perpetual fires of Pangaea's volcanic heart. Rivers of lava lace the landscape like glowing veins. In this light, everything looks forged rather than grown. You descend toward a nearby stream to cool off. The water is warm to the touch, more mineral soup than river. Small shelled creatures cling to the stones, gastropods testing their evolutionary luck. You scoop one up and notice faint ridges spiraling along its shell, the earliest hint of design for turbulence reduction. Nature's first experiments in fluid dynamics. A low bellow echoes from somewhere behind you. At first, you think it's thunder again, but it repeats, irregular and almost mournful. You turn to see a bulky reptile lumbering into view. Its back is ridged with bony plates, and its head carries a stubby horn. Moschops, a distant cousin of mammals built like a sofa with legs. Its heavy body sways with each step. Its mouth opens to crop vegetation, leaving wide, toothless gouges in the reeds. It's peaceful, but you can sense how precarious that peace is. The dream momentarily flickers, and you catch ghost images of predators, early archosaurs, thin-bodied and quick, moving like shadows. They vanish before you can focus, leaving behind only a sense of tension, the quiet before ecosystems stabilize. You walk further along the stream until you reach a patch of high ground. Here, the soil is dry, cracked like broken pottery. The sky overhead begins to clear. A faint breeze brings a smell of ozone, new storms brewing somewhere far away. You lie back, letting the heat soak into your bones. For a long moment, nothing moves. It feels as if the planet itself is catching its breath after the apocalypse. And maybe that's exactly what's happening. In this silence, the seeds of the next age are forming. Bones hardening, limbs lengthening, teeth sharpening. You tilt your head and notice tiny grooves in the dirt beside you, rows of pinpricks running in parallel. At first, they look like worm trails, but then one of the grooves shifts. Something pale and sinuous slithers free, an early lizard, tongue-flicking, eyes bright as beads. It studies you with mild interest before disappearing beneath a rock. Life refuses to quit. That's the lesson this place keeps whispering. No matter how many times the slate is wiped clean, something always scribbles back. You push yourself up and begin walking toward the horizon, where the land ripples into low hills. On the way, you find another small creature basking on a stone. Its jaw is lined with sharp, needle-like points, the prototype of true teeth. Proterosuchus, one of the earliest archosaurs, predator of the New World. It regards you lazily, mouth half open, revealing serrations faint as whispers. You can almost feel evolution trying out its first carnivore grin. The creature snaps at a passing insect, misses, and looks embarrassed. You smile. Every apex predator starts somewhere. You continue, passing through fields of primitive ferns. Spores drift like dust motes around you, catching the amber light. The sky deepens to crimson as the day wanes, casting long shadows across the steaming plains. Far off, a storm begins to build, towering clouds rimmed with lightning. You feel the low rumble beneath your feet again, the same deep pulse you felt 2 dreams ago. The Earth hasn't finished reshaping itself. The continents groan as they stretch apart, birthing fault lines and mountain chains. Tectonic plates grind like the gears of some immense clock. You imagine the world as a timepiece wound too tight, ticking toward transformation. Rain arrives not as droplets, but as a curtain, thick, warm, relentless. The ground instantly turns slick. You run for shelter beneath an overhang of basalt. From there, you watch the landscape blur into watercolor. Puddles merge into shallow lakes. Streams turn into torrents, And in the chaos, you glimpse the first inklings of something new. Creatures moving faster, more upright, their limbs positioned beneath their bodies instead of sprawling out to the sides. It's a subtle change but revolutionary. The age before teeth is ending. The age of balance, of stride, of pursuit is about to begin. Lightning flashes across the valley, illuminating silhouettes mid-stride. Their forms are leaner, their movements confident. You can almost hear the drumbeat of a new rhythm rising beneath the thunder, a rhythm that will echo for millions of years. When the rain finally stops, steam rises from the soaked earth, coiling upward like incense smoke. You step from your shelter and notice a small skeleton half buried in fresh mud. A jaw, a few ribs, vertebrae curved into a question mark. Not tragedy, just transition. Everything here is rehearsal. You crouch beside it, brushing away the muck. Teeth, faintly serrated, just forming. You smile. The dream has shown you evolution's patience, one mutation at a time, each failure paving the way for something extraordinary. You stand again, the storm's afterglow reflecting in every puddle. The air feels lighter, as if the world has finally exhaled. Somewhere in that sigh, you sense the first heartbeat of the dinosaurs themselves. Tiny, steady, unstoppable. You close your eyes, and the sound becomes your own pulse. The dream stretches wider, and suddenly you're not standing on a single patch of ground anymore. You're standing on a planet that refuses to sit still. The floor beneath you ripples, bends, then smooths again, as if the Earth has decided to breathe in slow planetary yoga. A low groan rolls through the air. You feel it more than you hear it. This is the sound of continents dancing, a tectonic waltz choreographed by molten choreography deep below. The heat from the planet's core presses upward, tugging at the seams of Pangaea. You picture it from above, one vast supercontinent painted in rust and green, girdled by an endless panthalassic ocean. From pole to pole, deserts shimmer and rivers loop like silver stitches. But down here, where you stand, the stitching is starting to come undone. You take a few steps and realize the horizon is moving with you. No, beneath you. Great plates of rock grind past one another at pace slower than your fingernails grow, yet powerful enough to lift mountains and drown valleys. Scientists will one day give names to these plates. Laurasia to the north, Gondwana to the south. But for now, they're just lovers drifting apart after a long embrace. Wind sweeps across the plain, carrying dust the colour of cinnamon. In the distance, thin plumes of smoke twist upward from vents in the crust. The air smells faintly metallic, like hot pennies. You crouch to touch the ground and it's warm, almost pulsing. Somewhere below, magma surges in crimson rivers, seeking escape. A rumble deepens, rocks rattle. One of the vents bursts open, sending a fountain of molten fire into the dim sky. The eruption isn't violent so much as majestic, like the planet stretching after a long sleep. Fragments of lava arc upward and freeze mid-flight, falling as black glass. You pick up a shard. It's smooth on one side, sharp on the other, already cooling in your palm. You can see your warped reflection in it. Historians still argue whether the breakup of Pangaea happened gradually, or through sudden, catastrophic pulses of volcanic activity. Whichever version is true, it's happening all around you. Fissures split open like lightning scars. Each new chasm fills with ocean water that hisses and boils, birthing fresh coastlines that glitter like wet teeth. To your right, a forest teeters at the edge of a forming rift. Trees, ferns, cycads, conifers sway precariously as the ground tilts. One slides slowly into the abyss, roots sapping like taut ropes. The sound makes your stomach twist. Yet even here, amid chaos, seedlings cling to life. You spot tiny shoots already sprouting from cracks in the newly cooled rock, green flames against the black. You keep walking, though walking feels generous. You're surfing continents now. Beneath your bare feet, the crust itself flows, drifting centimeters that feel like kilometers in dreamtime. Somewhere ahead, a river has been caught mid-transformation. Yesterday it flowed west. Today it has turned east, its course hijacked by the new fault line. The water rushes with the urgency of discovery. You kneel, watching fish caught between worlds struggle to orient themselves. They'll adapt, you think, they always do. A shape glides past beneath the current, a broad, flat creature armoured like a medieval shield. Placodus, one of the first marine reptiles experimenting with aquatic life. Its teeth are round and blunt, perfect for crushing shellfish. You smile at the evolutionary creativity on display. When the world splits apart, everything scrambles to fill the gaps. You follow the river downstream until it widens into a bay. Waves lap against black volcanic rock, leaving streaks of white foam. Seabirds haven't been invented yet, but something else fills the air. Pterosaurs. Primitive ones, small as gulls but bold. They dive, skim the surface, then spiral upward on thermal drafts. Their wings flash bronze in the sunlight. The sound of their calls, half screech, half song, makes the hair on your arms lift. You find a rock ledge and sit, watching this newborn coastline breathe. Steam rises from the water like incense. The sky is a bruised turquoise threaded with ash. To your left, a massive crack in the earth yawns open miles long. Molten rivers glow at its base. You can't help thinking of it as a wound, beautiful, yes, but painful. The continents aren't just separating, they're breaking hearts. The planet's old skin is tearing so new oceans can form. The thought makes you oddly emotional, maybe because it mirrors something human. The way change always arrives with both beauty and ache. A gust of hot wind rolls through, scattering ash across your lap. When you brush it away, you notice tiny impressions, footprints again, but different. Smaller, narrower, arranged in neat lines across the newly hardened lava. Creatures have already crossed this newborn land, staking claim before it's even cooled. You stand, following the trail. It winds through pumice and char, leading toward a cliff that overlooks the spreading rift. As you climb, you pass a cluster of fossilized tree trunks, their cross-sections gleaming like polished gems. Rings within rings, each one a year, each year a heartbeat of the planet. At the top, you pause. Below you stretches an ocean forming in real time. The edges glow faintly as magma meets water, creating steam pillars tall enough to scrape the clouds. Thunder rolls, not from the sky, but from beneath, deep and resonant. For a moment, you feel like you're floating above creation itself. The continents slide apart and new life follows the fractures. Rivers redirect, climates shift, creatures migrate or vanish. The earth is improvising, and you're here to witness the jam session. Something scuttles near your foot. You glance down to see a crustacean-like insect, Triops perhaps, carrying an egg sac along the damp ground. These little tadpole shrimp will one day survive almost unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. A reminder that sometimes stability, not novelty, wins evolution's race. You bend to watch it crawl into a puddle, leaving ripples that spread like miniature earthquakes. The wind changes again, cooler now, scented with salt. The dream tilts. Suddenly, you're no longer on the rim of a rift, but drifting high above it, suspended like a weather balloon. From up here, you see continents sliding apart in slow motion, their coastlines glowing red where magma wells up. Oceans seep in, blue veins filling the gaps. Clouds swirl over newborn seas. Lightning forks along mountain ridges that didn't exist an hour ago. You realize you're watching the birth of geography. Somewhere below, herds of herbivorous dinosaurs move along the safer highlands, silhouettes against the fiery backdrop. One looks up briefly, as if sensing you, an impossible observer in their sky. You drift lower again, landing on the slope of a fresh volcanic plateau. The ground still trembles occasionally, like a beast shifting in its sleep. Here, between fissures, ferns have already colonized the cracks. Their fronds curl and uncurl, painting the grey ash with green lace. You reach out and touch one. It's warm from geothermal heat, but alive, defiantly so. Scientists once theorized that plants were instrumental in stabilizing the planet after such upheavals, locking carbon and cooling the air. Historians still argue whether vegetation evolved faster during these tectonic bursts or merely survived them better. Either way, it feels poetic that greenery always sneaks back first, claiming life's sequel. You sit there a while, tracing patterns in the dust, listening out to the planet's subterranean heartbeat. In the distance, another mountain cracks open, spewing fire. Instead of fear, you feel awe. The Earth is an artist, and this is its performance piece. Lava as brushstroke, coastline as canvas. Behind you, a sudden gust carries the faint hiss of rain, unexpected given the heat. You turn, and sure enough, dark clouds have gathered, swirling tight as smoke rings. The rain begins almost playfully, then intensifies. Each droplet sizzles when it hits the warm rock, releasing tiny puffs of steam. Soon, waterfalls cascade down the volcanic slopes, carving grooves that will become canyons. The sight mesmerizes you. Water and fire in perfect balance, creation born from contradiction. It reminds you of that lava and ocean scene in every nature documentary, except this time you're standing inside it. The rain eventually cools the air, turning the ash to slick grey mud. You slide down the slope, laughing when you nearly fall. Dream physics makes everything both clumsy and graceful. At the bottom, you find yourself at the edge of a widening lake formed by trapped rainwater. The surface mirrors the sky, half smoke, half starlight. You kneel and look down. Your reflection flickers between human and something else, scaled, luminous-eyed, built for another age. Maybe the dream is reminding you how connected you are to this ancient chaos. A child of restless tectonics. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the continents continue their slow pirouette. The waltz will last for millions of years, ending only when the modern world finally takes shape. But right now, here in the molten twilight, it feels immediate, intimate, like music you can dance to. You rise and sway slightly, half joking with yourself, half hypnotized. Each tremor underfoot becomes a drumbeat, each gust of wind a violin sigh. The earth doesn't destroy itself tonight, it performs. You stay until the last eruption fades to embers, the sky cooling from red to indigo. A single star appears, the same one that will one day guide sailors across distant oceans born from this very rift. You smile, whispering to no one, "Nice work, planet." Then the dream begins to pull you onward again, away from molten coastlines and toward a jungle waiting just beyond the new horizon, one where giants are already stirring in the green. The smell hits first, sweet rot, wet bark, and something musky that doesn't quite belong to plants. The air here is thick enough to chew. You've drifted into the Jurassic, a world the colour of emeralds soaked in sunlight. The ground beneath your bare feet is stringy with moss, and every step releases clouds of spores that glitter in beams of filtered gold. Above you, trees the size of cathedrals sway lazily, their canopies stitched together by vines thick as ship ropes. Somewhere far off, something exhales, a slow, cavernous sound followed by the rhythmic percussion of footsteps too heavy to belong to anything ordinary. You move through ferns taller than your shoulders. Their leaves brush your arms with a hiss like silk. Moisture beads on your skin, and each droplet smells faintly metallic, laced with the breath of volcanic soil. The ground trembles again, just enough to make nearby leaves quiver. Then another step, closer this time. You freeze, the air vibrates, and birds, or proto-birds really, erupt from the trees in a panic of feathers and squeals. And then you see it. A shadow emerges between the trunks, vast and deliberate. At first, it looks like a hill moving on its own, but then the neck lifts, the length of a crane boom, muscles rolling beneath skin that gleams like old bronze. A brachiosaurus. Its tiny head, absurdly tiny, bobs high above the canopy, sampling leaves that glisten with dew. Each exhale sends a gust that bends the ferns toward you, carrying the faint scent of plant sap and whatever passed for dinosaur breath mints. You stand transfixed. Its front legs are longer than its hind ones, giving it that dignified slope that makes it look perpetually curious. It chews, slow and steady, eyelids half closed, as though meditating on the flavour of cycads. Scientists estimate Brachiosaurus could weigh up to 80 metric tons. You try to imagine that, 14 elephants stacked on a yoga mat, and you laugh quietly to yourself because the idea is ridiculous and yet right there in front of you. Another one appears from the mist behind it, then another, a small herd moving with the serene synchronization of parade floats. The ground pulses beneath their steps, and your ribs feel the rhythm. Even the air pressure seems to shift with their movement. This is the age of giants, and you've stumbled straight into its heart. You follow at a respectful distance as they wade through waist-high ferns. A juvenile wanders close, blinking at you with the eyes the colour of honey. Its nostrils flare, it huffs softly, and the gust nearly topples you. Then it ambles away, unconcerned. Scientists think these sauropods could live more than 100 years, their bones growing denser with time like tree rings in reverse. Historians still argue whether they travelled in family herds or loose gatherings, but watching them now, the tenderness in their proximity feels familial. One adult lowers its neck to nudge the smaller one forward, the way a parent might adjust a child's backpack strap. The forest trembles again, but this time from something sharper, faster, a predator perhaps. You crouch instinctively. Across the clearing, ferns ripple as something darts through. You catch glimpses, a flash of striped muscle, a tail slicing the air, teeth glinting. Allosaurus, leaner than the lumbering titans, but every bit as impressive. It pauses at the edge of the herd, head cocked. Its yellow eyes track the smallest Brachiosaurus, gauging weakness. You hold your breath. The scene feels cinematic, almost staged. The Allosaurus tenses, then lunges, but the herd reacts faster than you expected. One adult swings its tail like a battering ram, slamming into a tree with enough force to splinter bark. The predator veers off, hissing in frustration. The thunder of retreating steps fades into the forest. Peace restored. You let out a shaky laugh. Nature invented drama early, you whisper. You wander after the herd until the forest opens into a sun-drenched valley. Everything glows green, every leaf sweating moisture. Rivers snake through the undergrowth, carving mirrored paths. Tiny pterosaurs flit overhead, their shadows sliding across the moss like living kites. You kneel beside the riverbank. The water is warm, tasting faintly of minerals when you dip a finger in. Small fish dart between your reflections, early relatives of modern carp. Something splashes nearby. You glance over to see a squat reptile, half crocodile, half parthy bird, napping at insects. Its crest glows a faint orange in the sun. Scientists once debated whether these colours were for mating displays or camouflage. Historians still argue whether our guesses about dinosaur coloration are anything more than educated dreams. The Brachiosaurus herd drinks upstream, each lowering its neck in slow synchrony. The sight is oddly elegant, like massive ballet dancers performing a choreographed bow. You watch the surface ripple around their muzzles. Every breath they take releases clouds of steam that rise and dissipate like ghosts. And for all their size, they move quietly. No trumpeting roars, no chaos, just the low creak of joints and the whisper of leaves brushing skin. It's easy to imagine they own the world, and in this moment they do. The light deepens as afternoon slides into amber. Insects the size of your palm drift lazily through the air. You spot a cluster of massive horsetail plants rising beside the river, their hollow stems tall enough to hide inside. Curiosity gets the better of you. You duck into one, emerging into a narrow tunnel of green. Inside, the temperature drops. The sound of the world dims to a heartbeat. You realise these plants form a network. Their roots tangled so tightly they share nutrients across the forest floor. It's the first faint hint of ecosystem cooperation, the original internet, powered by fungi instead of fibre optics. You emerge from the hollow to find the valley glowing. Shafts of sunlight slice through the canopy, turning airborne spores into drifting gold dust. Somewhere above, the herd moves along the ridge, necks like arches against the sky. You climb after them, pausing halfway to catch your breath. Even in dreams, altitude demands respect. When you reach the crest, you look out across a vista that nearly swallows your mind. Forest after forest, mountain after mountain, until the horizon dissolves in haze. You can see distant volcanoes, smoke painting bruises across the blue. A faint vibration rises through your feet again. Not from an eruption this time, but from the synchronized march of multiple herds. Sauropods of different species, Diplodocus, Apatosaurus, maybe even Camarasaurus, spread across the valley like moving architecture. Together they reshape the landscape simply by existing. Each footstep digs irrigation trenches. Each tail sweep clears new pathways. Life, literally, engineering life. A light breeze brings a strange melody, a blend of chirps, rumbles, and low-frequency calls that you feel more than hear. It's not music exactly, but rhythm. You realise it's the conversation of giants. Some scientists speculate sauropods used infrasound to communicate across miles, the same way whales do today. You can't help but smile. In a sense, you're eavesdropping on the planet's earliest group chat. You stay until twilight paints the world violet. Fireflies emerge, though here they're larger, slower, their lights pulsing like soft lanterns. A stegosaurus wanders nearby, plates along its back catching the sunset like stained glass. It swings its tail idly, Thagomizer spikes gleaming. You whisper, half amused, "You're beautiful and extremely pointy." It ignores you, of course, and resumes munching cycads with the focus of someone late for brunch. The sound, crunch, chew, sigh, echoes soothingly. Near your feet, a lizard-like creature scurries between rocks. It pauses to sip from a puddle, and you notice its eyes move independently, chameleon style. Somewhere along the evolutionary line, dinosaurs borrowed that trick for aerial vision. You marvel at how small behaviours become monumental advantages given enough time. The night thickens. Cicadas, if they're even called that yet, begin their relentless chant. Frogs somewhere in the marsh answer with wet croaks. The sky turns into a tapestry of unfamiliar constellations. You find a flat rock still warm from the day's heat and sit, watching the silhouettes of the giants move slowly through the moonlight. It's astonishing how quiet it all feels. No engines, no hum of electricity, no distant sirens, just the patient rhythm of an untouched earth. A warm wind brushes your hair, carrying hints of pollen and resin. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The forest's humidity wraps around you like a weighted blanket. You think of how small you are here. Not insignificantly small, just correctly small. A meteor streaks faintly across the sky, harmless for now. You follow its path until it fades. Somewhere far below, a river shifts course, carving a new channel through the mud left by the day's herd. You imagine how millions of years from now, geologists will read that curve and reconstruct this moment. Every dent, every fossilized footprint, a diary entry written in rock. The Brachiosaurus herd settles for the night, folding their massive limbs beneath them like cranes at rest. Steam curls from their nostrils. The jungle hum softens to a lullaby. You sit quietly, trying not to disturb the dream's fragile peace. For a second, you think you hear music again, low notes reverberating through your ribs like a planet sighing contentedly in its sleep. Maybe it's just wind through the ferns. Maybe it's the earth reminding you that even giants dream. The stars multiply overhead, mirrored faintly in puddles on the ground. Somewhere to the east, lightning flickers, distant and silent. You stretch out on the warm rock, head tilted back, and let the prehistoric lull carry you. The pulse of the world slows, syncing with your own. When you finally drift toward deeper sleep, the last thing you see is a sauropod silhouette framed against the moon. Motionless, monumental, gentle. Dawn arrives with teeth. The mist that blanketed the valley all night burns away in streaks of pink and gold, revealing a silence so taut it feels like the world is holding its breath. Gone are the gentle sighs of the giants. They've lumbered off towards safer feeding grounds, leaving the forest floor mottled with their colossal footprints. What remains now are echoes, broken branches, crushed ferns, and the distant drip of condensation falling from leaves as long as your arm. You step carefully between the imprints, each one a shallow pond reflecting the awakening sky. Something is watching you. It's not imagination this time. The air itself carries that electric static of proximity, the invisible vibration of predator and prey sharing the same heartbeat. You slow your breathing, listening. Somewhere to your right, a twig snaps, not heavy like a sauropod step, but sharp, deliberate. Another follows, closer. You turn your head slightly, trying not to rustle the ferns. The forest seems to lean inward, conspiring with whatever stalks you. A flicker of movement, then another. They emerge in pairs, sinew and grace, bodies painted in shadow stripes that melt perfectly into the undergrowth. Ceratosaurus, about 6 meters long, built like sleek nightmares with hips that pivot like hinges. The first one lifts its head, sniffing. Its nostrils flare, its single horn glints in the pale light. Behind it, another slides into view, smaller, perhaps a mate or a rival. The way they move together is both beautiful and unnerving, like dancers who know every step of the choreography because they wrote it in blood. You drop to a crouch behind a fallen log. It's slick with moss, your hands sinking slightly into the damp decay. The smell is sweet and sour at once. You can hear your own pulse thrumming in your ears. The Ceratosaurus pauses, nostrils twitching again. It snorts, a puff of vapor curling from its mouth, then turns away, apparently uninterested. You exhale roar, quietly, carefully, but the smaller one isn't done. It steps closer to where you hide, head tilting, eyes narrowing. There's intelligence there, not human intelligence exactly, but calculation. It knows the forest. It knows you don't belong here. The creature lowers its snout to the ground, tasting the air with a flick of its tongue. The sound it makes next is low, guttural, almost conversational. The larger one replies from deeper in the trees. Then, as quickly as they appeared, both vanish into the green, tails slicing the air behind them. You stay frozen for a few heartbeats longer, letting your muscles unclench. Somewhere far off you hear them roar, brief, curt, victorious. Maybe they found breakfast somewhere else. When you finally stand, your knees crack. The forest smells different now, less floral, more metallic, as if the air itself has remembered fear. You follow their path through the ferns, noting the claw marks gouged into the soft soil. Each one is perfect, 3 toes, razor-edged, pressed deep. The prints lead to an open glade where sunlight pours like liquid gold. Scattered feathers drift in the air, grey and white, each one tipped with a faint blush of red. Feathers, real feathers. You pick one up, soft as breath, light as regret. This isn't just leftover plumage, it's evidence of evolution mid-sentence. Somewhere nearby, the Ceratosaurus had brought down an early feathered theropod, perhaps Ornitholestes or some smaller cousin. The transition from scales to feathers is happening right under your nose, the story of flight beginning in the shadow of teeth. Scientists have argued for decades about the purpose of these first feathers. Were they for warmth, display, or aerodynamic experimentation? Historians still argue whether colour existed in their plumage or whether those hues are inventions of our wishful imaginations. But standing here, watching sunlight ignite the drifting down, you're convinced colour came first. The world, after all, never misses a chance to show off. A sudden rustle above startles you. You glance up just in time to see a small shape launch from a branch, a feathery blur gliding across the clearing. It lands awkwardly on another tree, scrabbling for grip. Archaeopteryx. Its wings beat once, twice, then fold neatly, revealing claws still sprouting from each limb. It looks at you with the unimpressed patience of a creature halfway between worlds. Its eyes catch the light, bright amber, intelligent, ancient. You whisper, "Show off," and it tilts its head, as if agreeing. Below, the forest stirs again. The Ceratosaurus have returned, but they're not hunting now, they're feasting. Through the curtain of ferns, you glimpse them crouched over their kill, muscles moving under skin like ropes under sailcloth. The sound is wet, rhythmic, efficient. Even here in the quiet of prehistory, the logic of hunger is universal. You step back slowly, careful not to draw attention. Your heel lands on something hard, a stone maybe, but when you glance down it isn't stone at all. It's a tooth, long and curved like a dagger, the serrated edge glinting faintly. The root is still sharp. You turn it between your fingers, marvelling at how delicate it feels despite its purpose. You pocket the tooth instinctively, though dream logic tells you you'll lose it before morning. As you move deeper into the forest, you start to notice signs of balance, bones scattered, yes, but also regeneration. New plants sprouting from disturbed soil, small scavengers picking clean what remains. An early mammal, mouse-sized, darts out from under a fern, snatching a scrap of meat and vanishing. Life wastes nothing here. Every act of violence feeds something else. You reach a ridge overlooking a wide river plain. The water below gleams silver in the morning sun. Herds of herbivorous dinosaurs graze along the banks, Camptosaurus perhaps, heads down, tails swaying. The scene looks peaceful until you spot movement at the far edge. 3 slender predators working in tandem, their mottled hides blending perfectly with the dappled shade. Coelophysis, smaller than the Ceratosaurus, quicker, more tactical. You watch as they fan out, one circling downstream, another slipping closer through reeds. They move like liquid thought. Within moments, the herd senses danger. The nearest Camptosaurus bellows, rearing up, its tail slicing the air like a whip. Panic spreads and the plain erupts in motion. Mud flying, water churning, calls overlapping in a chaotic symphony. The predators strike. It's fast, merciless, almost elegant. One leaps, jaws finding purchase on a flank. Another darts in low, targeting the legs. The kill is messy but efficient. When it's done, the air fills with the metallic tang of fresh blood and the steady buzz of flies already arriving to audition for cleanup duty. You realise you've been holding your breath again. You exhale slowly, feeling the strange calm that follows witnessing nature's harsh choreography. In this world, fear and beauty share the same heartbeat. The survivors regroup, moving farther downstream, leaving a trail of churned mud. The coelophysis eat quickly, always glancing around for larger threats. Even apex predators here know their place in the chain. You retreat from the ridge, weaving through a corridor of tree trunks. The ground grows drier, rockier. You can smell minerals again, the faint tang of ironstone. It's quieter here. Only the rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of insects that sound suspiciously like crickets rehearsing a heavy metal solo. You stop beside a fallen tree and notice claw marks raked deep into its bark. Territorial signposts, maybe. Each groove gleams faintly where sap seeps out, catching sunlight like liquid amber. A light breeze stirs the canopy, scattering spores that glimmer in the air. You tilt your head back, watching them swirl. For a moment you forget the danger. Everything feels still again. Then a new sound breaks the calm. A series of short, high-pitched calls echoing through the trees. Not predatory exactly, more like communication. You follow the noise until you find a small clearing where a group of feathered theropods no larger than turkeys are engaged in what looks suspiciously like a dance. They hop, flap, and display bright crests and flashes of orange and blue. Courtship, you realise. Or maybe synchronized gossip. Scientists discovered fossils of such creatures with pigment cells still preserved, suggesting colours more vivid than any bird alive today. Historians still argue whether those hues were meant to attract mates or intimidate rivals. But watching them now, it's clearly both. These little dancers are dramatic, and you respect that. The performance ends abruptly when one of them notices you. With a flurry of wings, the group scatters into the underbrush, leaving only a single feather drifting to the ground. You catch it mid-air, twirling it between your fingers before tucking it behind your ear. Dream souvenir number 2. By afternoon, the forest grows warmer, the air buzzing with life. Distant roars echo occasionally, but none close enough to raise alarm. You pass an area where ash covers the ground, a recent brush fire perhaps. Out of the charred soil, green shoots already poke through. Life, irrepressible as always. You sit on a rock to rest, watching a trio of Rhamphorhynchus glide overhead, their tails tipped with diamond-shaped rudders. They shriek in what sounds suspiciously like laughter. One dives, snatches a fish from the river, and swoops upward again. You smile. The hunters rule the land, the air, even the water. This is their renaissance. And yet, somewhere within that constant motion, you sense the seeds of gentler futures, feathers that will soften, instincts that will shift from hunger to song. The day wanes, light dripping through the canopy like honey. The predators retreat into shade to sleep off their meals, bellies full, jaws relaxed. You find a quiet spot beneath a cycad's arching fronds and sink into the moss, heart finally slowing. The forest hums around you, neither cruel nor kind, simply alive. And as the first stars blink awake, you realise you've just witnessed the art of predation as nature intended. Precise, efficient, necessary. Somewhere beyond the trees, a deep rumble rolls through the air. Not thunder this time, but something stirring beneath the surface again. The planet's next movement, rehearsing below your dreams. You close your eyes, and the forest breathes with you. You wake to the sound of rain whispering on leaves that aren't really leaves at all. They're leathery, thick, a halfway invention between fern fronds and modern palm branches. Droplets slide down their surfaces in slow, syrupy streaks, catching faint reflections of your face before falling away. Everything glows faintly green, the kind of green that hums when you stare at it too long. You stretch, your body sore from sleeping against the living mattress of moss, and realise that the forest around you feels newly painted. Sharper edges, brighter colours, and almost decadent lushness. The Jurassic world has shifted again, tilting a few million years forward, and the details have turned up to 11. The rain stops as suddenly as it began. A mist rises, curling around your legs like affectionate ghosts. Then the first cry echoes through the canopy, a raspy, musical trill that could almost pass for a bird if it weren't so guttural. You turn toward the sound just as the shape glides between trees, not quite reptile, not quite avian, a living contradiction stitched together by experimentation. its feathers shimmer in muted rainbow hues, water beading along each vein like tiny gems. The creature perches on a fallen branch, tail spread for balance. Anchiornis, you think, or maybe its cousin. 4 wings, 1 on each limb, a prototype of flight. It tilts its head, sizing you up, feathers puffing slightly before it emits a single bark of irritation and hops closer. "Don't worry," you whisper. "I'm just the weird dream mammal." It blinks once, unimpressed, then flaps upward, disappearing into the higher branches. Its flight is more controlled fall than graceful soar, but still, you can see the miracle in motion. Scientists have argued endlessly about how flight began. Did dinosaurs leap from trees and glide down, or run along the ground until lift found them? Historians still argue whether Anchiornis represents the first true stage of flight or just another evolutionary rehearsal. You, however, just saw it happen, awkward and wonderful. The forest hums with similar hybrids. A lizard with proto-feathers scurries across a nearby rock, its hide patterned in a mosaic of scales and hair-like filaments. Further on, something that looks like a small armadillo but stands on 2 legs rummages through ferns. Every creature seems halfway finished, as if the world itself is testing prototypes, mixing textures and seeing what sticks. You wade through waist-high cycads until the ground dips into a marsh. The water is shallow and copper-tinted from dissolved minerals. A group of Compsognathus wade through it, snatching at frogs with needle teeth. They move like synchronized swimmers, each motion mirrored. One pauses to stare at you, head cocked, before chirping sharply, maybe an alarm, maybe a complaint that you're blocking the view. You crouch, letting your fingertips brush the water's surface. The mud beneath is alive with bubbles, methane probably, seeping from decaying plant matter. It pops in tiny bursts against your skin. The air smells faintly of wet bark and eggs, nature's perfume of regeneration. Something glides beneath the surface, a sleek scaled body longer than a human arm. It surfaces briefly, revealing a snout lined with teeth too sharp for comfort. Crocodilomorph, an ancestor of crocodiles, but slender, faster, still experimenting with how to dominate both land and water. It eyes you with prehistoric disinterest before vanishing again, leaving only ripples behind. You stand and notice how your reflection wavers, distorted by every bubble. You look half human, half shadow, and somewhere deep inside you the dream seems to whisper, "You're not separate from this." The same blueprint of cells and collagen threads through all of it, scales, feathers, hair, skin. Every texture you see is just evolution's handwriting at different stages. The air thickens again, heavy with humidity. Somewhere far off thunder murmurs. The clouds here never just hang, they perform. A bolt of lightning cuts the sky in half, briefly revealing mountains in the distance, their peaks still steaming from young volcanoes. The flash illuminates a field where herds of herbivores graze. Stegosaurus, Kentrosaurus, armoured tanks with tails like medieval weapons. Their plates gleam wetly, and you can almost see heat radiating from them. Scientists once believed those plates served as defence. Now many think they helped regulate temperature or attract mates. Historians still argue, of course, one faction insists the plates flushed with colour during displays like prehistoric mood rings. You can almost believe it. As lightning flickers again, you catch glimpses of red, orange and yellow shimmering along their backs, the valley suddenly alive with colour. It's not just camouflage, it's communication. The storm breaks fully now, rain sheets down, pounding leaves and your shoulders alike. You run for shelter under a rocky overhang where the air feels cooler, tinged with mineral dust. From this vantage, you can see the valley below transform into liquid motion. Streams flowing, mudslides carving new scars. The dinosaurs keep moving through it all, indifferent to weather. They're made for this chaos. You huddle deeper into the hollow, tracing grooves in the rock with your thumb. Fossil shapes, maybe. Ferns pressed flat, outlines of shells. This wall is a time capsule, each layer a postcard from earlier ages. You press your palm against the stone and imagine all the skins that once brushed this same surface. Scales sliding, feathers preening, skin stretching. Lightning flashes again, and in the momentary brightness, you catch sight of a creature perched near the cave mouth. Its eyes reflect silver. You blink, and it steps into view, small, wiry, almost cat-like, covered in downy fuzz instead of scales. A mammal ancestor, maybe Morganucodon. It twitches its whiskers, sniffing. The storm rumbles, but it doesn't flinch. Instead, it darts forward, grabs a beetle from a puddle, and vanishes into the dark. You laugh softly. Even surrounded by giants, the future mammals are already multitasking. The rain eases after a while, turning to drizzle. The smell of wet earth grows sweeter. You step out from the shelter and notice how every surface has changed colour. Leaves deeper, bark slicker, air shimmering. A rainbow arcs faintly above the valley. You'd expect tranquility, but instead the forest feels more awake than before. Movement everywhere, glints of scales, flashes of feathers, glimmers of skin too strange for classification. You follow a trail through the dripping ferns until you reach a clearing where sunlight has pooled again. There, basking on a flat rock, lies a creature so spectacular it looks imagined. Its body is long and lean, scales along the back, but feathers cascading down the arms in crimson and black. When it lifts its head, a crest of filamentous plumes fans out, each quill catching the light like glass threads. Dilophosaurus, though the version before you isn't the muted grey of museum displays. It's flamboyant, theatrical. It opens its mouth, revealing teeth as thin as daggers, and lets out a call somewhere between a hiss and a trumpet. Droplets spray from its tongue. The sound rolls through the clearing, echoing against the wet stone. Another answers from far away. Territorial Due, you stay very still. Its gaze flicks toward you, but you sense no threat, only curiosity. It takes one slow step forward, then another, nostrils flaring. Rain beads on its feathers, sliding down in rivulets. For a fleeting moment you can see every texture. The overlap of scales on its legs, the velvet fuzz near its jawline, the sharp quills along its spine. Evolution hasn't chosen one design yet. It's still sketching. The creature snorts and turns away, striding elegantly back into the trees. Its tail sweeps through the puddles, scattering arcs of water that sparkle in the sun. You exhale a laugh. You win, Fashion Week. The forest answers with a chorus of chittering noises. From a nearby bush, a cluster of tiny feathered dinosaurs no bigger than pigeons dart out, chasing insects. They hop and flutter clumsily, wings not quite ready for real flight. Each one is a different colour, green soy, copper, blue, as if the world has decided restraint is overrated. You sit on a boulder, letting them scurry around your feet. One pauses long enough to peck at the hem of your dream shirt, then scuttles away again. For a long moment, everything feels almost modern. Birds, mammals, reptiles, all here, prototypes coexisting in an impossible truce. The rain slows to a fine mist. Shafts of sunlight return, slicing through the canopy like golden knives. You tilt your face upward, feeling the warmth return. Droplets cling to your eyelashes. Somewhere above, the Anchiornis reappears, gliding from tree to tree with slightly more confidence this time. Its feathers catch the sun, glowing briefly before it vanishes again. A perfect callback to the morning's first miracle. You realise, watching it go, that the age of feathers isn't just about flight, it's about imagination. The world is inventing adornment, personality, expression. Scales are for survival, feathers are for flourish. And deep down, maybe you understand why humans will later obsess over beauty, colour, costume. That impulse, to display, to dazzle, was written here first in the damp air of the Jurassic. The wind picks up again, carrying the mingled scents of resin and rain. The forest hums softly, its heartbeat steady. You rise, brushing mud from your knees, and glance back at the clearing. The Dilophosaurus is gone, the tiny dancers have vanished, but a single feather floats down, landing at your feet. You pick it up, twirling it once before tucking it behind your ear beside the other. Your collection grows, tokens of transformation, proof that the world can reinvent itself again and again without apology. The sun dips lower, turning everything amber. In the distance you hear faint wing beats, the prelude to a sky about to be claimed. The next chapter of the dream waits above the tree line. And somewhere between cloud and sea, where feathers will meet open air and scales will find their reflection in water, you take a deep breath, smell the ozone, and step toward the glow. The ground tilts beneath you, not violently, but with the slow sway of a ship at sea. For a moment you think you're falling, until you realise the dream is simply lifting you upward, rising through the thick green canopy into pale gold air. The jungle below shrinks into an intricate carpet, rivers glinting like veins of quicksilver. Clouds brush past your shoulders, you inhale, and the sky tastes like iron and salt. You're higher than any mountain now, gliding without wings. The wind hums around you, pulling at your clothes in long, steady waves. Then from the corner of your vision, something vast glides into focus. A shadow against the sunlight, wings stretched wider than a city bus. Pteranodon, its body as sleek, bones hollow yet strong as steel scaffolding. It tilts effortlessly on an updraft, crest slicing through the air like a ship's prow. You can hear the wind whistling through the membranes of its wings. It's not alone. Dozens more spiral below you, their cries sharp and echoing, a symphony of sky conquerors. They dive and bank with uncanny precision, their silhouettes crisscrossing in looping trails. Scientists once thought pterosaurs were clumsy gliders, awkward albatrosses doomed to flounder on land. Historians still argue whether they walked gracefully or waddled like leathery penguins. Seeing them now, you know the answer. Grace was never the issue. Perspective was. Below, a cliff drops sheer into a restless sea. You descend with the flock, your body following their lead, air currents carrying you downward until your toes nearly skim the mist. The ocean spreads endlessly, steel blue and flecked with white caps. You smell salt, hear waves colliding against rock, and beneath it all something deeper, a pulse, a hum, as if the sea itself has a heartbeat. The pteranodon fold their wings, dive. For a split second they vanish beneath the surface, then burst out again, each clutching a fish that flashes silver in the light. Droplets scatter like gems before gravity reclaims them. You laugh under your breath. Sky kings indeed. The dream lowers you to the shoreline, feet sinking into warm sand that gleams faintly red from powdered volcanic rock. A fine mist rolls in, cool and electric. In the shallows, small marine reptiles weave between curling fronds of kelp. The water is so clear you can see everything, tiny shrimp flickering like sparks, fish glimmering in schools that twist like thought itself. A shadow glides past, vast and deliberate. You take a step back as the surface bulges outward, and then it breaks, Plesiosaurus, a predator of impossible design. Its head alone could swallow a car, its jaws snap shut with a crack that echoes like thunder. Water cascades off its back as it turns, dark eyes glinting with ancient patience. You stand frozen, watching its slow ballet beneath the waves. It rolls once, revealing the pale underside of its body before plunging again into blue. Bubbles trail behind, catching the sunlight in glimmers. Further out, the sea darkens. The deeper waters belong to creatures you can't fully see, only hints. A fin slicing the surface, a ripple that travels too far, too fast. Another giant glides up from the depths, mouth agape, Ophthalmosaurus with enormous eyes adapted for the dim twilight below. It breaches briefly, exhaling a column of spray before vanishing again. The sound of the surf merges with the cries of pterosaurs circling overhead. The sky and sea perform together, predator and prey choreographing an eternal duet. You walk along the beach. The sand is soft as flour and dotted with shells spiraling into geometric perfection. Some are cracked, exposing shimmering nacre. You pick one up, it's still warm. A sudden splash draws your gaze. Closer to shore, a smaller marine reptile, perhaps Cryptoclidus, thrashes, trapped in the shallows. One of its flippers beats helplessly against a sandbar. Instinct drives you forward before logic catches up. The creature's skin is smooth, mottled grey-blue, muscles coiled beneath like cords. Its enormous eyes meet yours, and for a moment there's recognition. Not fear, not threat, just mutual surprise. You press your palms against its slick side and push. The effort nearly knocks you over. The creature slides free, catching the next incoming wave. It vanishes into the surf, leaving a single echoing splash. "You're welcome," you mutter, wiping salt water from your face. Above, one pteranodon wheels lower, curiosity peaked. It circles once, shrieks approvingly, then catches a thermal and rises again. Apparently, even in the Jurassic, good deeds get Yelp reviews. The day burns hotter, the tide pulls back, revealing tide pools teeming with colour. Starfish cling to rocks, translucent jelly-like creatures pulse lazily near the surface. Each pool feels like its own miniature planet, alive with impossible variety. You kneel beside one and peer in. A shrimp flicks its antenna. A crab sidles defensively toward you, claws raised like punctuation marks. The air smells of salt and resin. Somewhere inland, the jungle still hums, but here, everything is motion, waves, wings, currents, life. You glance back toward the cliffs. Their jagged edges reveal layers of colour: ochre, charcoal, silver grey, each stripe a chapter of Earth's autobiography. You can almost read it if you squint. Volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, are all compressed into lines thin as thread. A low vibration travels through the sand, subtle but insistent. The tide isn't responsible. You look up just as a column of mist erupts offshore. Something larger than any whale breaches, a Leopleurodon, its skull enormous, jaws filled with interlocking blades of bone. It crashes back into the sea, sending waves that surge toward you. You brace yourself, laughing as the foam hits your knees. Historians still argue whether Leopleurodon reached the exaggerated size documentaries once claimed, 25 metres or merely 7. Seeing it now, you'd say large enough and leave it at that. The creature vanishes into the deep again, leaving the sea strangely calm. Silence settles, heavy but not empty. You take a few steps toward the receding tide, your footprints instantly filling with water. The ocean breathes in and out, unbothered by your intrusion. A gust of wind sweeps over you, carrying the high-pitched screeches of the pterosaur colony. You look up to see them nesting along the cliffs, hundreds of them, wings tucked, crests bobbing as they jostle for space. Hatchlings the size of pigeons hop awkwardly between rocks, stretching paper-thin wings under parental supervision. One takes a running start, flaps twice, and tumbles directly into the surf. It surfaces, indignant but unharmed, paddling until a gentle wave lifts it back to shore. You smile. Flight, it seems, requires a sense of humour. You climb the rocks for a closer look. The cliff face radiates warmth, and the nests sit in natural alcoves lined with shells and strips of dried seaweed. The smell is strong, brine, guano, and something sweetly organic. The adult pterosaurs watch you with wary eyes, their beaks clicking softly. One spreads its wings, shadow stretching over you like an eclipse. You bow slightly, an instinctive gesture of respect. For a while you sit among them, listening to the rhythm of wind over wings. You start to notice patterns, how the colony's cries syncopate with the surf, how the juveniles mimic the adults' postures. There's structure here, language even. Evolution is writing syntax into behaviour. A flash of silver catches your eye. Dolphins, no, not quite dolphins, leap beyond the breakers, their shapes sleeker, their tails vertical instead of horizontal. Ichthyosaurs. They arc gracefully, chasing schools of fish that scatter like stardust. Each breach is a punctuation mark in the ocean's long sentence. You watch until the sun begins to sink, staining the sea in bands of gold and crimson. The pterosaurs take flight again, silhouettes crossing the dying light. The air fills with the sound of leathery wings, the sea with ripples from returning hunters. The horizon glows like molten metal. You sit on the highest rock, letting the tide lap at your feet. In the distance, lightning flickers across the clouds, faint and far. For a fleeting second, you see the reflection of both sky and sea creatures mirrored together, wing and fin, scale and membrane. It hits you then how inseparable they are, the same impulse driving both realms, the need to rise, to move, to claim a dimension no other creature dared to own. You close your eyes and listen. Waves crash in slow rhythm. The air vibrates with the murmurs of flight. A drop of spray lands on your cheek, cool and sharp. The dream holds you there, balanced between sea and sky, at the crossroads of evolution's grand experiment. And as darkness falls, you think of the irony, how creatures that once ruled the clouds and the deep will one day vanish, leaving behind only fragments of bone and imagination. But for now, in this suspended twilight, they're eternal. The stars appear, faint at first, then brighter, mirrored by the phosphorescence stirring in the shallows. Above, pteranodon silhouettes drift past the moon. Below, Ichthyosaurs gleam like living comets. You exhale, the salt of the sea on your tongue, the wind in your lungs, and realize this moment might be the calmest you've ever felt. The night deepens. The tide whispers secrets in a language you almost understand. You stand, brush sand from your hands, and turn toward the inland glow. Somewhere beyond the cliffs, the volcanoes are rumbling again, fire preparing to meet water. And you, ever the sleepwalker of time, follow the sound toward the horizon, where red meets blue. The sky is bleeding again. A faint orange glow stains the horizon as you climb the rocky path away from the sea, following the distant tremor that has been pulsing under your feet since sunset. The air smells of burnt pine and wet ash, a combination both comforting and alarming. Every step you take crunches through pumice, light enough to float, yet sharp enough to scrape your skin. The pterosaur cries fade behind you, replaced by the low hum of the earth clearing its throat. The slope grows steeper. Trickles of molten light slide through cracks between stones, flowing like veins of honey in the dark. The ground radiates heat that seeps through your souls, warning and invitation in one. Above, the first stars tremble in the smoky sky, blurred halos instead of pinpoints. Somewhere deep below, magma is gathering its courage. You crest a ridge and stop, breath-catching. The volcano stands before you, a mountain with its heart exposed. The crater pulses, casting rhythmic flashes of crimson that turn the surrounding jungle into silhouettes. Every tree looks like a black coral, every shadow alive. Bursts of gas hiss upward, glowing briefly before dissolving into the night. This is what creation looks like mid-sentence. You edge closer, careful to test each patch of ground. Fissures split and reseal like breathing skin. Pools of molten rock shimmer between slabs, reflecting your face in fragments. It's both mesmerizing and terrifying. This living furnace. Scientists say Jurassic volcanoes helped reshape climates, pumping carbon dioxide that warmed the planet into a greenhouse of abundance. Historians still argue whether these eruptions fueled the rise of lush ecosystems or sowed the seeds of future collapse. Either way, standing here, you feel the contradiction in your bones. Destruction as fertilizer. A sudden crack splits the air, a sound so sharp it erases thought. A plume of ash erupts skyward, scattering glowing fragments that drift like fireflies before falling back as sparks. You shield your face, heart thudding. The air fills with warmth and chaos, yet beneath the roar there's rhythm, almost music. The volcano doesn't rage, it sings. You watch as rivers of lava pour down the mountainside, carving paths that glisten like molten glass. Trees ignite in whispers, collapsing in graceful slow motion. And still, amid the inferno, life refuses to flee entirely. Out of the smoke, a herd of Camptosaurus gallops past, eyes wide, scales dusted with cinders. One pauses briefly, looking toward you, as if confused by your calmness, then disappears into the red haze. You follow from a distance, boots sinking into fresh ash that's already cooling. Every footprint leaves a glowing outline that fades within seconds. The heat intensifies until breathing feels like drinking steam. You reach a plateau where the lava flow slows, thickening into sluggish waves. Here, small creatures dart between rocks, silhouettes lit from below, early mammals again, tiny desperate opportunists. One carries a seed pod twice its size, dragging it across the hot ground with manic determination. You can't help whispering encouragement. Above, the sky flickers between orange and black. Ash drifts down like grey snow. You taste it on your tongue, chalky, bitter, ancient. Lightning forks within the volcanic plume, bright enough to turn night briefly into day. The light reveals shapes in the distance, tall, narrow dinosaurs running along the ridge, their crests catching the flashes, Dilophosaurus perhaps, or something newer. Their calls echo through the smoke, sharp and mournful. You realise that for them, this isn't apocalypse, it's weather. The wind shifts, carrying a low, sustained roar from the crater. The ground shakes, forcing you to steady yourself against a boulder. Somewhere to your right, the slope collapses, sending an avalanche of glowing rock cascading down toward the valley. You step back instinctively, though the dream protects you from the heat. It's hard to tell whether you're sweating or melting. In the chaos, you notice something strange. Glimmering trails etched into the cooling lava, spirals and loops drawn by escaping gas bubbles. They look deliberate, almost artistic. You crouch, tracing one with your finger. It's warm but solidifying fast. These accidental carvings will harden into stone, immortal graffiti left by a planet expressing itself. A sudden gust scatters ash around you, obscuring the view. The world shrinks to sound and vibration, the hiss of vents, the crackle of cooling rock, your own heartbeat thudding in triple time. When the wind eases, you find yourself surrounded by ghostly outlines. Tree trunks turn to charcoal pillars, branches stripped bare but still standing. A forest petrifying in real time. You reach out and touch one. The bark flakes off, revealing an underlayer already turning to stone. Minerals replacing cells moment by moment. It's both eerie and comforting, life refusing to vanish, merely changing its material. Scientists later will find fossilized forests like this, trees frozen mid-motion, roots still gripping soil that became glass. Historians still argue how quickly petrification happens. Centuries, decades, hours. Your hand says, instantly enough to matter. The air grows thicker again, full of floating embers. You retreat toward a rock ledge overlooking the valley below. From here you can see the lava flows branching like rivers of light, winding through the jungle toward the distant sea. The horizon flickers where molten rock meets water, sending plumes of steam sideward. It's beautiful and terrible, like watching the planet write poetry in Maya. Somewhere nearby, a sound interrupts the reverie, a low rhythmic drumming. You scan the slope until you spot them. A pair of Cryolophosaurus, their crests catching the glow. They move cautiously, weaving between smoking fissures, using the chaos as cover for a hunt. You stay still as one lowers its head, sniffing. Even here, amid cataclysm, hunger persists. The smaller of the pair lunges at something in the ash, too fast for you to see, and emerges with a wriggling mammal clamped in its jaws. It shakes the prey once, twice, then drops it lifeless. Meal secured. You half expect them to fight over it, but instead the larger one nudges the other gently, a silent agreement. They share. In this hellscape, cooperation has evolved beside predation. You wonder whether kindness began like this, not philosophy, just survival done smarter. When they're gone, you climb higher. Drawn toward the crater's glow, the roar grows until it's all you can hear. Then abruptly, silence. The volcano pauses as if inhaling. You freeze, knowing instinctively what comes next. A blinding flash. A shockwave that feels like standing inside a drum. The plume bursts upward in a fountain of incandescent debris. The night turns white. Pieces of glowing rock rain down, thudding into the ground around you, each one a miniature sun. One lands close enough to spray you with sparks. For a second you see your own reflection in its molten surface, face ghosted with firelight, eyes wide, but calm. When the blast subsides, a strange quiet settles. The mountain exhales a column of smoke that stretches endlessly upward, merging with the clouds. The colour shifts from red to silver to deep violet as dawn approaches. You realise you've been here all night. The first hints of morning paint the edges of the smoke with lavender. The volcano still glows at its seams, but the violence has softened into steady breathing. Below, the valley smoulders, a mosaic of black and gold. And yet, even now, you can see life creeping back. Insects skimming over cooling rock, tiny lizards emerging from cracks. Steam hisses around them like applause. You sit on the edge of the world's kiln, exhausted but exhilarated. Your hair smells faintly of ozone. Ash coats your arms like grey glitter. The volcano's heartbeat slows to a lullaby rhythm deep and steady. You think about how every catastrophe the planet endures becomes an invitation. New minerals, new landscapes, new chances. Destruction doesn't erase, it edits. Behind you, the sky brightens. A pteranodon drifts past, wings glowing in the newborn light, circling once before vanishing into the distance. Its call fades slowly, echoing off the cooling slopes, a farewell or perhaps a beginning. You stay a little longer, watching the last pockets of lava pulse and dim. The warmth against your skin is gentle now, almost affectionate. When you finally stand, the ground feels solid again, cool to stone. The wind carries the faint scent of sulphur mixed with something floral, new growth already brewing. And in the quiet after fire you sense it. The planet's brief exhale before the next inhale, the pause between ages. You close your eyes, letting that rhythm sync with your own, and step away from the crater as the world tilts toward dawn. The night you leave the volcano behind feels endless, but at some indistinct moment a softness creeps into the air. A hush that carries no ash, no smoke, only dew. The dream shifts again. You feel it in your bones before your eyes open. The weight of time, the quiet click as one age folds into another. When you finally look around, the world has changed colour. Gone are the bronze tones of the Jurassic. This place glows in green so new they look invented. It's morning, but not any morning you've ever known. The very first of the Cretaceous. The light has a syrupy quality, thick and golden. Mist hangs low, swirling over a plain filled with flowering plants. Yes, flowers. Tiny splashes of white, yellow and violet speckle the ferns, painting the ground like a spilled palette. The air smells sweet, layered with the faint spice of pollen. You take a step and nearly sneeze. Congratulations, you've just encountered the planet's first hay fever season. It's quieter here, calmer, but the silence hums with potential energy. You hear something faint at first, a trill, then a chirp, then another, overlapping. It takes you a moment to place the sound because you associate it with your own backyard. Birdsong. Only these aren't modern sparrows. They're early avian experimentations, descendants of those feathered acrobats from your last dream. They flit between the new blossoms, feathers shimmering with iridescent undertones. One lands near you, tiny claws gripping a reed that sways under its weight. Confucius ornis, perhaps, or Ichthyornis. Its beak still carries faint tooth nubs, a mouth halfway between old and new. It tilts its head, eyes bright and calculating. Then, with a sharp chirp that sounds uncannily like laughter, it launches into the air. Its wings slice sunlight into golden ribbons. Scientists once debated whether these early birds could truly fly or merely glide from tree to tree. Historians still argue whether the Cretaceous dawn chorus resembled modern bird song or something rougher, more reptilian. Standing here, you hear both. The raw throatiness of ancestry and the melodic lift of invention. Its evolution clearing its throat, trying out new notes. You start walking toward the horizon. The ground here rolls gently, carpeted in soft grass that didn't exist a few epochs ago. Each blade glistens with dew. A breeze stirs, carrying the mingled perfumes of sap and pollen. Butterflies, actual butterflies, zigzag drunkenly through the air. One lands on your sleeve, its wings patterned in orange and black fractals. Insects are having their renaissance. Bees buzz from flower to flower, legs dusted with gold. You crouch to watch one as it disappears into a blossom shaped like a trumpet. When it emerges, its body gleams with pollen grains. The partnership between plant and pollinator has just begun. What you're witnessing will feed the entire future world. Farther ahead, the trees grow taller, broader, some already resembling oaks and magnolias. Between their trunks, small feathered dinosaurs dart like squirrels, climbing and gliding from branch to branch. One lands with a soft thump in front of you, cocking its head. Microraptor. 4 wings, a glossy blue-black sheen that shifts to green when the light hits right. It hisses softly, then flicks its tail, scattering droplets. You smile. Nice coat, you murmur. It blinks once, as if flattered, before scurrying up a tree and vanishing into leaves. The forest opens to a lake so still it mirrors the sky perfectly. Water lilies bloom across its surface, petals floating like pale stars. Dragonflies skim the air, their wings buzzing in constant motion. The reflection of the clouds ripples when a small fish jumps, a silver arc, then a plop. You kneel at the edge and watch the concentric circles fade. Across the lake, something massive stirs. Reeds part, water surges, and a broad-snouted head rises, dripping. Spinosaurus, the fisherman king. Its long jaws gleam with teeth fine as needles, perfect for spearing prey. It moves slowly, deliberately, every step creating waves that roll toward you. Its sail, striped crimson and gold, catches the morning light. You You stay perfectly still even though you know you're safe inside a dream. It lowers its snout, nostrils flaring, then plunges into the shallows. There's a brief commotion, fish scatter, water churns, and then silence again. The creature lifts its head, victorious, a struggling meal clamped between its teeth. It swallows once, then turns back toward the reeds, the sail cutting through mist like the fin of a myth. You can almost hear the narrator in your head, and breakfast is served. After it disappears, the lake calms. The surface soon fills again with reflections and ripples, the cycle unbroken. You wander along the shore until you reach a patch of sandy ground where tracks crisscross in all directions. Some prints are enormous, sauropod probably, but others are delicate, bird-like, each toe ending in a curved claw. This place is alive with movement. Herds have passed recently. You can feel the Earth's memory underfoot. A soft vibration travels through the ground. At first you think it's the volcanoes again, but then you hear it. Dull, rhythmic thuds in a rising tempo. You turn, eyes widening as the forest edge quivers. The trees part, outstride iguanodon, their thumbs crowned with spikes, their bodies massive, yet oddly graceful. A herd, dozen strong, walking in slow procession across the plain. They move with the unhurried confidence of creatures that have found balance, neither hunters nor helpless prey, but citizens of a stable ecosystem. Each step sends up small puffs of dust that glimmer in sunlight. Juveniles trot alongside adults, nudged gently by broad snouts when they stray too far. You find yourself walking parallel to them, matching pace. The sound of their movement, soft, rhythmic, like distant drumming, fills the air. Scientists have reconstructed their posture over the years, first crawling like lizards, then standing upright, then both. Historians still argue whether they grazed constantly or travelled long distances to feed. Watching them now, you realise the truth lies somewhere between. They move, they eat, they live, methodical as breathing. You pause as one turns its head toward you. Its eyes, deep amber, reflect the rising sun. For a brief moment it feels like acknowledgement, a silent nod from the past. Then it continues on, unconcerned. Behind the herd, a swirl of smaller creatures follows, scavenging the trampled ground for seeds and insects. Early mammals again, persistent little entrepreneurs. One sits up on its hind legs, sniffing the air, whiskers twitching. You almost expect it to wave. The day grows warmer. The air fills with the drone of cicadas the size of your palm. Leaves shimmer in the heat haze. You find a patch of shade beneath a fern tree and rest. The kip breeze carries snippets of sound, chirps, clicks, the occasional low rumble of something enormous farther away. It's not chaotic, it's orchestral. Every note fits. The Earth at this moment has reached a kind of balance between predator and prey, plant and pollinator, air and light. It's a golden hour that will last millions of years. A sudden flash overhead pulls your gaze skyward. There, cutting through the blue, glides a new kind of pterosaur, larger, sleeker, its wings stretch impossibly wide, its flight steady as thought. Quetzalcoatlus, perhaps, ruler of the upper atmosphere. Its wings catch sunlight, glowing pale orange against the azure. As it banks, its shadow sweeps over the plain, a moving eclipse. You can't help but grin. Now that's a commute. It circles once, then drifts toward the horizon, swallowed by clouds. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the hum of the world wash over you. The Cretaceous dawn feels gentler than the Jurassic chaos, a breathing space before the next upheaval. You can sense that balance won't last forever, but for now, it's perfect. Somewhere nearby, a bird begins to sing again. Not a random call, but a pattern, a melody with pauses, repetitions, crescendos. The first true song. You listen, realizing it's both ancient and familiar, echoing through every lullaby ever hummed by a human. Music began here, in feathers and air. Smile tugs at your lips. Maybe that's why people play instruments at sunrise, to remind the world it once sang itself awake. The light shifts again, growing warmer. Pollen drifts through sunbeams, glowing like gold dust. The iguanodon herd fades into the haze, leaving only their footprints in the soft soil. You crouch and press your palm against one, the warmth of the earth pulsing through your skin. In that touch you feel continuity, life layering itself without pause. every age cradled within the next. The sky hums one final chord of morning. The world exhales. You stand, brushing dust from your hands, and look eastward where the day is still being born. Somewhere beyond those distant hills, the small survivors are stirring. The mammals, the seeds, the promises of something new. And somewhere else, in darker places, the air is already changing again, whispering of endings that will arrive disguised as stars. For now, though, the birds keep singing Mimko, and the planet keeps turning under your feet like a record spinning its brightest track. The sun climbs higher, and with it the air thickens into honeyed heat. The herds of giants have already retreated to shade, their heavy footprints turning into small ponds where dragonflies hover like living jewels. But under the ferns, in the hush between roots, a different world is busy, one that doesn't shake the ground when it moves. You crouch, parting the leaves, and there they are, the tiny survivors. A shrew-sized mammal darts across the soil, fur slick with dew. It pauses to sniff a fallen seed, then begins to dig, hind legs working furiously. Iamaya, perhaps, the Dawn Mother. She carries her future in a pouch of warmth unseen but certain. Her heartbeat thrums faster than the wings of the insects above her. It's fragile, yes, but its rhythm, its persistence. You sit as still as you can, knees drawn up, and let your eyes adjust to this smaller scale. The forest floor is a galaxy in miniature. Mushrooms glow faintly blue in the shadows, releasing puffs of spores that drift like nebula. Beetles with mirrored shells clamber over fallen bark, antennae twitching to private music. You can hear every movement if you listen hard enough. The scrape of tiny claws, the wet sigh of earth shifting, even the faint crackle of sap drying in the sun. From above comes a distant bellow, some enormous herbivore reminding everyone that size still matters. But down here, the giants are irrelevant. Life has chosen stealth, softness, strategy, Jimo. The Iamaya finishes her excavation and disappears into the burrow. A few seconds later, the soil ripples as she turns inside, packing the entrance. Protection, insulation, maybe hope. You wonder if she dreams when she sleeps, if her mind, small as a raindrop, can hold images of safety or abundance. Historians still argue whether mammals of this era possessed anything we'd call consciousness. Standing here, watching her care for her hidden litter, you'd vote yes. You move carefully so as not to collapse her tunnel and wander a little farther along the shaded creek. The ground squelches beneath your feet. A cluster of multituberculates scurry between roots, nibbling seeds with front teeth sharp enough to carve grooves in stone. Their tails flick back and forth like metronomes. They don't notice you. They're too busy being alive. A shadow crosses the clearing, quick, narrow, predatory. You look up. A small raptor glides overhead, feathers flashing bronze. The mammals vanish instantly, melting into hollows and crevices. The forest goes quiet for 3 heartbeats, then resumes its whispering. Survival here depends on timing. You kneel by the creek to wash your hands, the water cool and brown with silt. Minnows swirl around your fingers. One bumps your skin, curious before darting away. You catch a glimpse of a turtle-like creature paddling lazily nearby, its shell translucent enough to see the pulse within. Everything in this age is halfway between design sketches, solid enough to function, still flexible enough to change. You lean back against a tree, its bark is rough and resinous, the smell clings to your hair. A line of ants marches up the trunk, each carrying a fragment of leaf or eggshell. They vanish into a hollow halfway up, where the line reverses, workers emerging empty-mouthed to gather more. It's a perfect loop, discipline without dialogue. Somewhere in that pattern, the blueprint for civilizations hides, though none of them will know it for another 100 million years. A rustling draws your attention to a tangle of vines near the base of the tree. Something small and sleek peers out. Rapenomamus, a badger-sized mammal, with teeth made for mischief. Unlike its vegetarian cousins, this one eats meat, sometimes baby dinosaurs, according to the fossils found with bones still inside its ribcage. It sniffs, unafraid, eyes bright with a cunning almost human. You grin, whispering, "I see you, troublemaker." The creature huffs and vanishes back into the foliage, leaving only the faint odour of musk. The heat deepens until the air wobbles. Cicadas scream their endless summer anthem. Somewhere overhead, 2 pteranodons duel for dominance, wings flashing as they spiral higher and higher until one peels away in retreat. Their shadows flicker across the forest floor like shifting nets. You decide to climb a nearby slope for a better view. The incline is slick with moss, and every step releases the smell of damp stone. Halfway up, the canopy opens, revealing a clearing awash in sunlight. From here you can see a patchwork of biomes stitched together. Swamp, meadow, hoar, forest, all shimmering under the noon glare. And threading through every part of it, invisible yet undeniable, are the small ones. Birds, mammals, insects, tiny machines of endurance already inheriting of a world they don't know will someday be theirs. A low murmur of thunder ripples across the plain. Rain again, or maybe just the planet's sigh. Clouds pile in the distance, fat and grey. The wind changes direction, cooler now. You smell ozone, sweet and metallic. You crouch behind a boulder as the first drops fall, heavy enough to dent the dust. The smell of petrichor rolls through the valley. Wet earth and pine resin. Within minutes, the storm becomes a curtain, blurring the landscape into streaks of green and silver. You watch water bead on spiderwebs stretched between leaves, each droplet reflecting a miniature world. Beneath the shelter of the rock, 2 Eomaya emerge, soaked but fearless. They scuttle toward a patch of mushrooms, tearing off bits and chewing quickly before darting back to cover. When the thunder cracks overhead, one pauses, trembling. Instinct tells her danger. Logic, if she had it, would say she's fine. But instinct wins. She dives into her burrow, tail vanishing last. You stay until the rain softens to drizzle. The valley glistens, washed clean. Steam rises from the soaked ground in lazy tendrils. Somewhere nearby, frogs begin to croak, their voices overlapping into a muddy chorus. You wander downhill again, stepping carefully to avoid the burrows. The sun returns as if nothing happened, sharp and hot. The moisture turns the air into a shimmering veil. A flash of colour catches your eye. A flower bent under the weight of a bee the size of your thumb. It buzzes lazily, drunk on nectar. This entire dance between bloom and pollinator, an invention barely a few million years old, is already flawless. You lean closer, mesmerised by the symmetry. Each petal curls inward slightly, forming a cup of sunlight. It smells faintly of cinnamon. Above you, birds dart between branches, shaking droplets onto your head. You don't mind. The noise of their wings feels like applause. For a moment, you imagine yourself shrinking smaller and smaller until you fit into this microcosm completely. Sleeping in seed pods, drinking dew, gossiping with beetles. It's strangely appealing, the simplicity of a life measured in heartbeats instead of ambitions. A sudden vibration runs through the ground again, faint but insistent. You brace instinctively, but this isn't eruption or stampede, it's something subtler. The movement of countless small feet beneath the soil, the underground world waking up after the rain. Worms, larvae, burrowers, turning earth, breathing life into decay. This is the quiet labour that keeps the planet fed. Scientists have found fossilised burrows from this period, perfectly preserved tubes of compacted earth. Historians still argue whether these networks represent primitive cooperation or coincidence. Watching the ground pulse softly beneath your feet, you suspect the former. Cooperation starts small. The light begins to shift again, amber sliding toward rose. The long shadows of the forest stretch and merge. Bats, or their early prototypes, flit through the twilight, wings paper-thin and translucent. Their squeaks bounce invisibly across the trees, mapping air in sound. Echolocation fresh and flawless. You follow their path until you reach another clearing. Here, small mammals gather cautiously around puddles to drink. You crouch, keeping still. One raises its head, water dripping from its whiskers, eyes bright in the dusk. It studies you for a long moment, then resumes drinking. The trust feels unearned but precious. When night fully settles, the forest floor transforms. Beetles glow softly, mushrooms pulse with bioluminescence, and the dew itself seems to shimmer from within. Everything tiny now owns the stage. The thunder lizards sleep miles away, irrelevant for a few hours. The night belongs to whispers, to creatures who survive by not being seen. You lie back on the damp ground, staring up through the ferns at a slice of moonlight. The stars above blink faintly through mist. One falls, a meteor, maybe a pebble from the future. Its streak fades quickly, but you trace its path until your eyelids droop. Before sleep claims you again, you think about endurance, The kind that doesn't roar, doesn't conquer, just persists. It's the mammals who will carry the planet through the fire yet to come, pocketing seeds and memories. You can almost feel them breathing beneath you, small lungs rising and falling in the dark. The forest hums its lullaby, low and steady. Somewhere a Eomaya squeaks softly, answering the rhythm. You close your eyes, and for a moment your heartbeat joins theirs, a chorus of persistence beneath the great indifferent stars. You wake to wind, though at first it feels like the breath of something alive. The ferns bend in unison, rippling as if the whole forest inhales with you. Dawn, soft and grey, stretches across the horizon. Everything seems normal, even peaceful. Yet there's an unease in the air, an almost imperceptible hum that doesn't belong to insects or weather. It's deeper, slower, like a string plucked somewhere inside the planet. The little mammals are already at work. You spot one darting through the underbrush, carrying a seed twice its size. Birds chatter in the canopy, their calls rising and falling like laughter. Even the great triceratops you glimpse grazing in a distant meadow moves with lazy calm. Life has no idea it's living in a countdown. The hum deepens. You tilt your head, expecting thunder. But the sky is clear, cloudless, wide as eternity. A faint streak slices across the morning blue, too bright for an ordinary shooting star. Too slow, it vanishes behind the hills before you can blink. The air goes still. You tell yourself it's nothing, but something in the back of your mind disagrees. Somewhere, hundreds of kilometers away, a rock the size of a city is slicing through the upper atmosphere at 20 kilometers per second. It hasn't reached here yet, but the world already feels its approach. You start walking, perhaps instinctively, toward higher ground. The forest hums with its usual rhythm, bees in flowers, dragonflies over puddles, reptiles sunning on stones. But beneath it all runs a counter-melody of tension. Birds take flight for no reason. Frogs stop croaking mid-note. You hear the soft thud of hooves as small herds move uneasily between trees. At a stream you kneel to drink. The water is colder than before, metallic, as if the temperature has dipped. Sunlight still filters through the leaves, but it seems too sharp, each beam edged with white fire. You touch your reflection and find it fractured, rippled by unseen tremors. In the distance, thunder, or something like it, rumbles again, except it isn't followed by rain. You stand, brush damp soil from your hands, and keep walking until the forest thins. From the ridge ahead, you can see an open plain stretching toward a horizon lined with low mountains. Herds graze there, indifferent. A family of ankylosaurs trundles slowly across the meadow, tails swinging like maces. Further off, a group of hadrosaurs raises its crested heads toward the sound you can't hear anymore, but somehow feel. Scientists later will find evidence of strange behavior in the final days of the Cretaceous. Fossilized nests left unfinished, migration routes cut short, bones clustered near ancient riverbeds. Historians still argue whether animals sensed the coming disaster, or whether the signs were too subtle. Watching them now, their movements feel too restless to be coincidence. A gust of hot wind sweeps across the plain, lifting dust that glitters faintly in the sunlight. When it passes, a low boom follows, a sound so distant it feels imagined. The ground trembles for half a heartbeat, then stills again. Birds wheel upward in startled spirals. Even the air tastes different now. Iron, ozone, the faint spice of burning. You sit on a rock to steady yourself. The sky remains unnervingly bright. Clouds form and dissolve in moments. You remember reading once that the meteor approached from the southeast, invisible until it was too late, striking what will someday be called the Yucatan. You look that way now, across the endless blue curve of horizon, and realize that somewhere beyond it, history is seconds away from restarting. The first true sound reaches you not as noise but as vibration. The rock under your feet shivers. Birds explode from the trees in panicked waves. The air pressure shifts, sucking the warmth from your lungs. Then, light, not sunlight. It sears across the sky, turning morning into instantaneous noon. Shadows vanish, the mountains themselves cast no outline. Your instincts scream to look away, and you obey just in time. The afterimage paints your eyelids in white fire. The shockwave takes longer to arrive. When it does, it's not sound so much as force. the planet exhaling through every atom. You feel it lift you slightly, a wind too heavy to be air. Trees bend, snap, fold like paper. A cloud of ash and soil races across the horizon, devouring colour. And then, silence again. The forest is gone. Not destroyed, just erased. The air hangs thick and grainy, as if you're standing inside a snow globe filled with dust instead of flakes. Particles drift downward, glowing faintly orange. The sunlight dims to copper, then red. You start to walk, unsure why, following the instinct more than direction. Underfoot, the ground is coated with a fine grey powder that clings to your skin. Every footprint leaves a glowing outline before the dust resettles. Through the haze you glimpse movement, a lone triceratops staggering through the ash, its frill streaked with soot. Each breath from its nostrils releases a plume of steam. It calls once, a low, mournful bellow, then collapses to its knees. The sound echoes longer than the body lasts. You crouch beside it, hand hovering over its flank. The skin is warm but cooling fast. You whisper something meaningless, but the gesture feels necessary. Further away, flashes of fire streak across the horizon. Secondary impacts, molten rain. The smell of sulfur thickens until your throat burns. You wrap your arms around yourself. Not out of fear, but as if bracing against the enormity of what's unfolding. The world darkens by degrees. The sun becomes a pale disk behind clouds that pulse with lightning. Ash drifts like snow. You climb the ridge again, your body heavy, your feet sinking into newly formed mud. When you reach the top, you can see the edge of the cataclysm, a wall of fire and dust rising miles high, curving with the planet's arc. You can't hear it anymore, but you can feel its heartbeat, slow and unstoppable. This, you think, is what an ending looks like when it's too big for tragedy. And yet, amid the burning horizon, life clings. Small shapes dart between the rocks, mammals again, their fur grey with ash, but eyes still bright. One carries something round in its mouth, maybe a seed. Another follows, squeaking softly. They vanish into a crack in the hillside just as the first gust of fallout wind roars past you. Scientists will one day find these burrows filled with silt, bones curled together inside like punctuation marks. Historians still argue whether survival that day was luck or design, maybe both. You stumble down the far side of the ridge into a gully where the air is thicker but cooler. Rain begins, fat, hot drops that hiss when they hit the ground. It's not water, not yet. The sky is still sorting itself. Each drop leaves a tiny crater in the ash. You find a hollow beneath an overhang and crouch there, knees pulled to your chest. The sound of rain becomes a steady drumbeat. With every strike, steam rises, turning the world ghostly. And then, gradually, the firelight fades. When you dare to step outside again, the storm has shifted. The rain cools, the ground steams less. Above you, the clouds churn, swirling in colours too strange for language. Violet, amber, bruise blue. Lightning crackles horizontally across the sky. You realise you've entered the quiet between disaster and consequence. The meteor's work is done. Now the planet will answer. The wind carries faint echoes, a hiss, a sigh, maybe the ocean boiling somewhere far away. Every sound is soft now, blurred by ash. You walk slowly through the grey landscape where outlines of trees stand like charcoal sketches, and every step sinks a little deeper. Eventually you stop. The air feels thick enough to hold your body upright. You look up, trying to see stars, but the sky is blind. Somewhere in the distance, a single bird call pierces the silence. It's thin, trembling, defiant. You can't see the bird, but you picture it. A small soot-coated creature perched on the last unburned branch, singing, because that's all it knows how to do. You listen until the sound fades. Then the wind returns, whispering across the barren plain, carrying heat, dust, and the faintest trace of salt from seas still simmering at their edges. It sounds almost like words, but not in any language you know. If you had to translate, it might be saying, "This too will pass." And under that whisper, the planet's own pulse, steady, patient, already planning what comes next. At first there is no dawn, only a thick velvet night that doesn't end when you open your eyes. It's the kind of dark that presses against your eyelids, seeping in through the thin spaces between thoughts. You're lying in ash, though it feels almost soft like the ghost of snow. Every breath you take tastes of metal and dust. Somewhere far off something drips, a slow, steady rhythm echoing in the emptiness. You sit up. The world around you is grey in every direction, a colourless ocean of stillness. The air is cool, but it carries heat underneath, like an ember trying not to die. Each movement sends a faint plume of soot rising around you, floating lazily before settling again. The sun hasn't vanished. It's simply imprisoned behind a ceiling of ash that wraps the globe. Scientists will call it the impact winter. Historians still argue how long it lasted, months, years, decades. But in this dream, time feels meaningless. Here, it's just one long, suspended breath. You start walking. The ground crunches underfoot, a mosaic of fractured stone and glassy beads of rock. Impact spherules are flung across continents when the meteor struck. They glitter faintly when you move your hand lamp of memory across them, like stars that fell and forgot how to shine. No birds sing, no insects hum. Even the wind seems afraid of itself. And yet, when you kneel and brush away the ash, you find signs of persistence. A fern frond, half buried but green at its centre. A beetle shell still iridescent beneath the grey. Life doesn't vanish. It hides, waits, plans. The temperature drops further as the day, or what would have been day, drags on. The clouds above churn slowly, glowing with faint internal lightning. Each flash paints the landscape in monochrome. You imagine the upper atmosphere, thick with soot and sulphur, blocking the sun so efficiently that photosynthesis itself pauses. The planet holds its breath. You find a ridge that overlooks what used to be forest. The silhouettes of trees remain, their trunks turned to charcoal, branches pointing like skeletal fingers toward the blind sky. Between them, pools of stagnant water glimmer dully. Ripples cross one as something stirs beneath. A survivor, maybe, or just the planet exhaling through cracks. You crouch beside the pool, trailing a finger through its surface. It's cold. Beneath the reflection, faint movement. A fish, ghost pale, sails translucent. It swims lazily, unbothered by your presence. The extinction hasn't claimed everything yet. You smile despite yourself. A low rumble travels through the ground, not violent but constant, like distant thunder that never fades. It's the earth settling, adjusting to its new weight. Mountains slump, seas retreat, fault lines sigh open. Everything shifts to accommodate loss. You walk for what feels like hours but could be minutes. The ash muffles sound so completely that your footsteps seem to vanish the moment they land. Occasionally, you think you hear whispers, the voices of the wind twisting through hollows. Eventually, you come across a small rise of rock. At its base is a dark gap gapes between slabs. You kneel and peer inside. Warmth greets you, faint but real. You crawl in. The narrow tunnel opens into a wider chamber, and there, clustered together, are the living. A small colony of mammals huddles in a pile of dried leaves. Their eyes reflect dim light like tiny lanterns. Some sleep, others nibble seeds stored in a hollowed root. They don't flinch when you enter. Perhaps you're too ghost-like to register. One, slightly larger, lifts its head, sniffing. Its whiskers tremble. A mother, maybe. She presses closer to her young, curling around them in a crescent of warmth. The air in the burrow smells of damp fur and soil, cleaner than the poison above. You crouch, resting your palms on the floor, feeling the steady thrum of tiny hearts. This is what hope looks like at the microscopic scale. Trembling, exhausted, still breathing. Scientists have found burrows like this, fossilized warrens beneath the Cretaceous ash, evidence that small creatures outlasted giants simply by digging deep and waiting. Historians still argue whether survival was coincidence or cleverness. Watching the little mammals groom one another, you think maybe it's love. You stay until their soft squeaks blend with your heartbeat. When you finally crawl back out, the air outside feels colder, emptier. The sky remains a dim bruise, flickering with distant lightning. You make a small fire from driftwood, wet, reluctant but willing. Its flame burns orange, the only colour left in the landscape. The warmth prickles your skin, a reminder that you're still here too. You stare into the flicker for a long while. Above, Ash drifts down in lazy spirals, sometimes glowing faintly as it catches the light. It looks like snow in a world that forgot what seasons mean. As the hours stretch, the darkness deepens again. The fire shrinks, struggling for oxygen. You huddle closer, pulling your coat tighter. Your mind drifts. You dream inside the dream. Rivers frozen mid-flow, continents cloaked in grey, creatures moving like shadows beneath layers of dust. Everything slowed to the heartbeat of stone. You wake with a start. The fire's out. Faint light seeps through the ash blanket overhead. Not sunlight exactly, but a suggestion of it. The air feels marginally warmer. You stand, stretch, and realize the horizon has shifted color. From iron grey to faint bronze. Change, microscopic but undeniable. You walk again. Each step feels lighter now, though the ash still clings. In a shallow ravine you spot something moving, green, unmistakably green. A shoot pushing up through the soot, its tip curling toward the dim light. You kneel beside it, brushing the surface gently. The stem trembles, alive, the first plant to dare the open air. You grin through tears you didn't expect. The wind rises suddenly, scattering dust in all directions. It clears a patch of ground around you, revealing dozens more sprouts, each barely visible. The world is waking from its coma. You take a deep breath. The air still tastes of sulfur, but beneath it lies another note. Wet soil, possibility. In the distance you hear a sound. Faint at first, then stronger. Wings, not pterosaurs, they are gone, but birds, real ones, smaller, sharper, were survivors of their ancestors. They emerge through the haze like living embers circling once above your head before vanishing into the unknown. You laugh softly. You made it, you whisper. The clouds thin enough for one weak beam of sunlight to slip through. It strikes your face, warm and fragile. The ash sparkles in its path, turning the air into glittering fog. You sit down right there in the soot and close your eyes. The warmth spreads across your skin, slow but certain. The silence now feels different. Not funereal, but reverent. The world isn't dead, it's simply paused between breaths. You picture the tiny mammals stirring in their burrows, the first ferns unfolding, the cautious birds testing their wings. It will take millions of years, but this moment is the first page of the next chapter. The ground under you hums faintly again, the same rhythm as before, but softer, more hopeful. You lie back, arms spread, staring into the ashen sky until your eyes adjust enough to see movement within the clouds. Currents twisting like smoke, light beginning to filter through. You exhale long and slow, the planet exhales with you, and in that shared breath you understand that every ending is just the Earth, clearing its throat before it speaks again. The air changes first. The heaviness that once pressed on your chest lifts, just a little, like someone has cracked open a window in the sky. The grey ceiling of ash thins to smoke, and through it seeps a ghost of sunlight, pale, weak, but defiantly gold. You take a breath, and for the first time in what feels like centuries, the air tastes almost clean. The world around you looks unrecognizable. The forests are gone, replaced by rolling plains of soot and stone. Rivers have redrawn themselves, carving new paths through the soft sediment left by floods. The seas glint dull pewter, their surfaces calm but heavy with silt. Everywhere you look, the outlines of the old world linger like burn marks. The bones of giants lie half buried in the dust, ribs arching toward the sky like fallen temples. You step carefully through the wreckage. The ground is uneven, scarred with cracks still warm from the earth's fever. Small puddles shimmer in the crevices, catching the thin sunlight and scattering it like broken mirrors. You kneel beside one and see your reflection, pale, soot-streaked, eyes too wide. But behind you something green moves. A sprout. It's only a few inches tall, a stubborn streak of colour in the grey. A fern curling open one cautious frond, then another beside it, and another. Before long, you realise they're everywhere. Tiny flashes of green, poking through cracks in the ash like punctuation marks in the silence. The earth has begun to write again. You crouch, brushing the fragile leaves with your fingertips. They tremble but don't break. Resilience always feels like a miracle when you witness it this close. Scientists say ferns were among the first plants to return after the cataclysm. spreading in great waves across the ruined continents. Historians still argue how quickly that green carpet covered the world. Years, decades, or merely the blink of a geologic eye. You're watching the answer unfold in real time. The air grows warmer as the sun claws higher through the thinning haze. Insects return first, tiny black specks flickering above the new growth. One lands on your wrist. A fly, simple, perfect, iridescent in the light. It cleans its wings, unimpressed by apocalypse. You laugh softly. You guys never quit, do you? The fly lifts off, vanishing into the shimmering air. You keep walking until you reach what used to be a lake bed. Now it's a vast plain of cracked clay, the surface patterned with fissures like ancient calligraphy. Shallow streams trickle across it, weaving into each other until they find their way to a newborn river. You follow the sound of water until you reach its edge. The current moves slow but steady, carrying flakes of ash downstream. Fish, small, silver, survivors, dart between the ripples. The river's banks are lined with new shoots of grass so tender they look translucent. You sit, letting the cool water lap at your hands. It hits you suddenly. This planet refuses to stay ruined. You look up. The sky, though still streaked with smoke, glows blue at its edges. Clouds drift lazily, tinted with orange. The light feels warm on your face. Movement catches your eye across the river. A shape, small but quick, darts from one patch of ferns to another. Then another follows. Mammals again, larger now, more confident. Their fur darker, thicker. One pauses at the water's edge to drink, ears twitching. Its reflection ripples beside yours. You hold still. The creature looks up, its nose twitching, and for a heartbeat you meet eyes across 70 million years of waiting. Then it disappears into the undergrowth, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves. Farther downstream, a group of shorebirds wades in the shallows. They dip their beaks rhythmically, pulling worms from the mud. Their feathers are dull but functional, the air around them shimmering with the faint hum of life resumed. One lifts into the air, wings flapping hard before catching an updraft. The others follow, a ragged chorus of survival. You lie back on the warm bank and watch them spiral higher. Above them, the sun breaks free of the haze entirely for the first time. It floods the valley with golden light, turning every blade of new grass into a spark. The warmth seeps into your skin. You close your eyes, imagining the continents beneath you shifting again, slow as thought. The landmasses fractured by the impact are still moving, pulled apart by currents of molten rock. Mountains will rise from these cracks, seas will retreat and return, and the map of the world will never look the same again. Beneath your fingertips, the ground hums faintly, life reorganizing itself, roots spreading unseen, microbes rewriting soil chemistry grain by grain. In this moment, the earth feels alive, not as a surface, but as a being. You sit up again. Across the horizon, smoke still curls from distant volcanoes. The air ripples above them like heat haze. Each eruption throws up clouds of dust that blend into the sky, but they no longer block the sun completely. It's balanced by trial and error. You start to walk toward higher ground. On the slope above the valley, you find something half-buried, a fossilized egg split neatly in two. Inside, the shell glitters with minerals, opalized over time. You turn it gently in your hands. What was once potential is now art. You did your part, you whisper. You place it back in the soil, covering it loosely with dust. As the day stretches, colour returns to the world in small doses, moss green, clay red, sky gold. In the far distance, lightning flickers again, but it's storm, not fire. The weather has remembered its rhythm. You climb to a plateau and look down. What was once desolation now shimmers with texture and motion. Mist rises from the river. Wind ripples through the first meadows. Insects glitter in the light. Somewhere, something chirps, tentative but melodic. Scientists will later call this the Paleogene, the beginning of the age of mammals. Historians still argue whether the dinosaurs truly ended or simply evolved into something quieter with feathers. You can almost see both truths layered over each other, the shadows of lost giants lingering like afterimages, and the small warm shapes bustling into their future. You take a step forward and feel the soft crunch of grass under your heel. It's a tiny sound, but it means the world has texture again. As you walk, the air fills with new smells, fresh sap, damp soil, the sweetness of decay that means things are growing. You pass a cluster of strange plants with waxy leaves and bulbous flowers, their petals pulsing faintly in the wind. Bees hum between them, giddy with purpose. A low growl echoes somewhere behind you, not threatening, just the sound of life stretching its limbs after a long sleep. You turn and catch sight of a silhouette moving through the tall grass, furred, muscular, uncertain of its own power. The future predator, still figuring out what hunger means. You smile. "Take your time," you whisper. The creature sniffs the air and slips away. You reach the ridge's summit just as the sun begins to set. The sky flares orange, then red, then soft violet. Every colour feels new again, like the world is showing off its palette after centuries of grayscale. You sit cross-legged, watching the horizon. Wind rushes past your ears, carrying with it the layered chorus of a healing world. Trickling water, rustling leaves, faint animal cries. And underneath it all, that low hum again, the earth's pulse, steady and calm, the sound you've been hearing since the beginning of this dream. You close your eyes and breathe with it. The air feels cleaner with every inhale. Maybe this is what rebirth sounds like. Not trumpets or thunder, just the quiet rearranging of everything that remains. Somewhere in the distance a mammal squeaks. Somewhere else the first owl of this new world calls into dusk. The echoes blend, rise and drift upward into the settling dark. You lie back on the grass, arms spread, feeling the warmth of the earth through your spine. Stars begin to pierce the thinning haze, each one reflected in dewdrops around you. The planet exhales, and you exhale with it, perfectly in sync. It isn't paradise, not yet, but it's beginning again, and that's enough. Morning arrives soft and slow, as if the new world is testing its own heartbeat before committing to another day. Dew clings to the tips of young ferns, and the first real sunlight you've seen in eons spreads across the valley like liquid honey. You sit up, your back sore, but your lungs full of clean air. The taste of ash is gone. In its place lingers something simpler. Moist soil, blooming pollen, the green scent of recovery. You begin to walk, drawn by curiosity more than direction. Beneath your feet, the ground feels different now, looser, textured, alive. Each step sinks slightly into earth that's rebuilding itself grain by grain. The wind combs through the grass, whispering secrets in languages no human will ever learn. You follow a narrow trail downhill, and the terrain changes again. Grass gives way to fine sand, then to a smooth stretch of clay that gleams in the sunlight like red velvet. You kneel and run your fingertips across the surface. It's still warm from the sun, soft enough to shape. You press your palm down and lift it, leaving an imprint so clear you can see the lines of your fingers. You laugh quietly. Future archaeologists are going to have questions. When you stand, you notice other impressions nearby, not yours. Small ones, perfectly preserved tracks crossing the clay in overlapping lines. Birds, perhaps, or early mammals. One set ends abruptly at a shallow depression where the clay is cracked. You crouch, tracing the edges. Inside lies the faint outline of a skeleton, barely visible beneath a thin layer of dust. The bones are delicate but complete. Ribs, curved like Valdo reeds, skull narrow, tail curled protectively around the torso. A bird that didn't quite make it. It's not morbid, just serene, the way time turns everything into sculpture. You brush the surface gently, the clay crumbles, revealing more detail. For a moment you swear you can feel a pulse beneath your fingertips. The ghost of life fossilizing in real time. Scientists will one day call this process permineralization, minerals seeping into pores, replacing tissue atom by atom. Historians still argue whether fossils are more life or stone, relic or record. Touching this one, you know it's both. You keep walking, the path sloping toward a dry riverbed. The wind grows cooler there, carrying the faint smell of salt and minerals. The banks glisten with crystals fine as sugar. You crouch and dig into the mud with your hands. The soil gives easily, and beneath it you find fragments of bone, rounded, heavy, half turned to stone. You arrange them on the surface like puzzle pieces, though they belong to no puzzle you could ever solve. Maybe a jaw, maybe a rib, maybe just something once alive that no longer minds classification. You sit back and watch the sunlight play across them, the shadows stretching like veins. There's comfort in this quiet archaeology. No brushes, no tools, just hands and patience. A bird calls somewhere behind you, echoing through the empty space. The sound reminds you that this whole valley, this whole epoch, is a museum still under construction. Everything here is both artifact and exhibit. A gust of wind scatters sand over your small collection, half burying it again. You smile and leave it there. Let the earth keep its secrets until someone else is ready to listen. You follow the riverbed until it opens into a wide basin. The walls around it rise in layered stripes, red, ochre, cream, grey, each band a memory. You touch the stone and feel heat stored from millennia. It's a timekeeper, silent but precise. You trace one layer to another, realizing you're running your hand across millions of years in a single motion. You find a ledge where erosion has exposed a jumble of bones, vertebrae, femurs, fragments of teeth. They're enormous, remnants of the old order, the dinosaurs whose reign ended in fire. Some are polished smooth by water, others jagged and raw. You sit cross-legged beside them, the scale humbling. One tooth as long as your forearm glints faintly in the light. You can imagine it once embedded in a jaw, snapping through flesh, commanding an empire of fear. Now it lies harmless, cool, against your palm. The mighty eventually make great paperweights, you whisper, half amused, half reverent. A soft vibration under your feet interrupts the silence. Not earthquake, just the murmur of water underground. Somewhere below, the planet's veins are filling again, carrying minerals that will someday turn these bones into stone, preserving every groove, every scar. You tilt your head back and look up. The sky is almost perfectly blue now. Wisps of cloud drift lazily, shaped like wings. For the first time in countless ages, sunlight strikes the earth uninterrupted, painting everything in gold. The heat soaks into your skin. You stretch out on the warm rock, tracing cracks that run across the fossil beneath you. You think about the future, the people who will one day find these bones, brush them clean, argue over their names. You picture scientists in dusty hats, squinting in desert light, trying to assemble stories from fragments. They'll marvel at these same stones, calling them sort of relics of monsters, yet never quite grasp the tenderness of the world that made them. Historians still argue whether humanity's fascination with fossils is scientific curiosity or spiritual nostalgia, the yearning to touch something that knew the world before us. Lying here, palm pressed to ancient bone, you understand it's both. This connection feels sacred, quiet, intimate. Wind whistles through the basin, low and mournful. Dust swirls in lazy spirals, settling again like fine lace. The air hums faintly with heat. You notice how the colours in the rock deepen as the sun moves west. Reds turn to amber, greys to violet. It feels like the stone itself is breathing. You wander farther along the ridge, where smaller fossils dot the surface. Leaves, shells, impressions of scales. You pause at one particularly detailed print. A perfect fern pressed into stone, each vein preserved. You trace it carefully, thinking of the first green shoots you saw pushing through ash days or millennia ago. This is its ancestor, immortalized mid-gesture. You whisper, "You came back." The wind answers with a sigh that sounds almost like agreement. As you continue, you stumble across a shallow cave half hidden by debris. Inside, the walls glisten with mineral deposits, striped and smooth. At the back, embedded halfway in the stone, lies a full skeleton, a small theropod curled into itself like a sleeping cat. Its ribs arch protectively around nothing, or maybe everything. You kneel beside it, brushing away loose dust. The bones shimmer faintly, outlined in quartz. You can almost see the texture of its feathers, frozen in negative relief. Scientists once found similar fossils in Liaoning, where volcanic ash buried creatures so quickly their final gestures survived, one caught mid-flight, another mid-meal. Historians still argue whether this particular specimen's pose is death's accident or life's grace. Here, it looks like peace. You sit there for a long time, the silence heavy but gentle. Outside, the light begins to fade. Shadows stretch across the sand, blending into one another, until the entire landscape glows in a muted orange haze. You walk out of the cave and pause at the threshold. The basin below gleams softly, a patchwork of rock and memory. From this height, it looks like a mosaic. Each fossil, each bone, each shard of shell a tile in the story the Earth is telling about itself. You run your hands through the sand, feeling pebbles, fragments, textures, the tactile vocabulary of deep time. You lie back again, closing your eyes, palms pressed flat to the ground. You can feel the heartbeat beneath, the planet's slow, steady thrum. Not words, not song, but a frequency of belonging. And as the first stars blink awake overhead, you realize you're lying on history's open book. Every ridge and fossil beneath you is a sentence, every grain of sand a syllable. You're not just walking through time anymore, you're touching it. And time, finally, is touching you back. The ground cools beneath you, and the hum of deep time fades into something more precise. Metal wheels turning, voices echoing faintly through fog, the rhythmic click of a lantern swinging from a horse-drawn carriage. The dream shifts again, quick and quiet, folding its ancient pages until the world smells not of fern and ash but of coal smoke and damp paper. You open your eyes to find yourself standing on a cobblestone street slick with drizzle. London, or something like it, stretches around you. Gas lamps glow through the mist, halos of amber light trembling in the rain. Men in waistcoats hurry past, boots splashing through puddles. Women clutch shawls close against the chill. A newspaper boy shouts headlines that bleed through time. New giant found in Dorset Cliffs. You follow the sound toward a shop window where a small crowd has gathered. Inside, displayed on velvet and glass, lies a single fossilized tooth as long as your hand. A handwritten card beneath it reads, "From the mighty Megalosaurus." You can almost hear the echo of your own voice from another age whispering, "I remember you." The people around you murmur with awe and suspicion. Some call it proof of monsters, others insist it's the bone of an elephant from Noah's Ark. One man laughs nervously, saying if such creatures walked here once, good thing they've the courtesy to be extinct. You step closer. The fossil gleams faintly under the gaslight, every serration catching gold. Somewhere behind the counter, a clerk polishes glass, oblivious to the fact that he's tending humanity's first selfie with deep time. Scientists will later call this moment the dawn of paleontology. Historians still argue whether its spark came from curiosity, faith, or the delicious thrill of fear. You know it's all three. You leave the shop and wander down a narrow lane where the smell of ink and coal thickens. Posters line the walls, lectures on pre-Adamite beasts, exhibitions promising the lost world of the giants. You duck into one of the lecture halls, drawn by the hum of anticipation. Inside, the air is heavy with candle smoke and damp wool. Rows of men and women sit shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on a raised platform where a man in a rumpled coat adjusts his spectacles. He clears his throat, taps the chalkboard with his pointer, and declares, "Ladies and gentlemen, behold the thunder lizard, Iguanodon." He gestures toward a crude illustration behind him, a squat rhinoceros-shaped beast balancing awkwardly on all fours. The audience gasps. You bite back a smile. They'll get the posture wrong for decades yet, but it doesn't matter. This is wonder in its purest form, humans meeting prehistory for the first time, not in dreams, but in drawings. The lecturer holds up a fragment of bone. "Found in the cliffs of Sussex," he says. "Proof that our own England was once home to creatures beyond imagination." A woman in the front row faints gracefully. Someone fans her with a pamphlet. The man beside you whispers, "Imagine, sir, beasts the size of cathedrals." You imagine, but unlike them, you don't have to. After the lecture, you drift with the crowd into the damp evening. The street buzzes with excitement. A group of students argue animatedly about whether the fossils prove or disprove Genesis. You pass two gentlemen in bowler hats trading bets about which extinct creature would win in a fight. One swears by the terrible lizard, the other champions the sea dragon. You grin, thinking how human that instinct is, to resurrect monsters only to make them duel in imagination. A carriage rattles by, splashing your boots. Its side bears a painted sign, "Crystal Palace Dinosaurs, see the giants of old." Curiosity tugs at you like gravity. You follow the sign out of the city, through fog-draped streets that fade gradually into open parkland. The rain stops, leaving the air cool and metallic. The path leads to a sprawling garden illuminated by torches and lanterns. There, half hidden among reeds and artificial ponds, loom the silhouettes of creatures reborn from stone and plaster. You step closer. One by one they emerge from the mist. A massive iguanodon standing stiffly like a lizard, caught a mid-curtsy. A megalosaurus frozen in what was meant to be ferocity, but reads more like indigestion. Their scales glisten with dew, their glass eyes reflecting torchlight. They're inaccurate, ridiculous, magnificent. Children point and squeal. A man with a pocket watch explains proudly to his wife that these beasts once roamed our very soil. Another man sketches by lantern light, muttering measurements under his breath. You walk between the statues, feeling the weight of irony and affection alike. These sculptures are wrong by modern standards, but gloriously sincere. The Victorians didn't just study dinosaurs. They fell in love with the idea of them. You pause beside a pond where a plaster ichthyosaur arches half out of the water. Its paint has begun to peel, revealing cracks beneath. You trail your fingers along the cool surface. The texture reminds you of the fossils you touched earlier, but this one hums faintly with imagination instead of memory. Scientists still argue whether these early reconstructions hindered or helped understanding. You decide they did both. Truth often modern starts as theatre. A whistle blows somewhere behind you. A voice calls out, "Closing time, ladies and gentlemen!" The crowd disperses reluctantly. You linger a little longer, watching lanterns reflected in the water. As they dim, the statues seem to move ever so slightly in the fading light. An optical trick, or maybe gratitude. You leave the park and wander toward a quieter corner of town, where another kind of discovery waits. Through an open window, you glimpse a study cluttered with papers and bones. Inside, a man hunches over a desk, sketching. His hair is wild, his hands stained with ink. Charles Darwin, though younger than you expected, frowns as he writes. You watch from the threshold as he studies a fossilized fin, comparing it to a bird's wing. His quill scratches furiously across the page. The room smells of tobacco, parchment, and something electric, an idea being born. You realize you're standing at the edge of a revolution. The fossils you followed through epochs have finally found interpreters capable of asking the right questions. The world is about to rearrange itself again, this time through thought instead of fire. You step back into the street, the fog curling around you like memory. The city hums with invention. Steam engines hissing, printing presses clattering, minds sparking. Everywhere you look, bones are being cleaned, named, and displayed. Museums rise like cathedrals of curiosity. Scientists debate classifications, poets write odes to thunder lizards, and children collect fossils the way they once collected marbles. Everyone wants a piece of the deep past. You walk past one of the new museums, a grand building of iron and glass. Inside, skeletons stretch toward the ceiling, shadows cast long by gaslight. You step inside, your footsteps echoing off marble floors. The smell of dust and varnish fills the air. A young guide, nervous but proud, points upward at a towering skeleton. "Mighty Diplodocus, sir, reconstructed bone by bone from the Americas." You tilt your head back. The skeleton looms impossibly tall, ribs like rafters. Even stripped of flesh, it radiates grace. You whisper, "I remember when you breathed." The guide blinks, puzzled, then smiles politely. "She's quite something, isn't she?" You nod. She always was. Outside, night deepens. Carriages clatter along wet cobblestones. A steam whistle echoes from the river. You linger at the museum steps, looking back through the glass facade where the skeleton gleams, white against the dark. It stands not as a warning, but as an invitation to remember, to wonder, to question. You turn toward the fog-draped street again, hearing the hum of human progress blending with the heartbeat of the earth beneath. For the first time, they seem almost in harmony. The Victorians will get much wrong, but they'll ignite the century that gets most right. Curiosity has replaced fear, and imagination has grown teeth again. You walk into the mist, the lamplight softening behind you. The clop of horses, the hiss of steam, the rustle of pages, all merge into a lullaby of discovery. The past, once buried, is awake again, and the world will never sleep quite the same. You blink, and this fog of Victorian London dissolves into neon. The air smells like popcorn, electricity, and rain on asphalt. The distant clatter of hooves has become the low thrum of engines and the staccato rhythm of typewriter keys. You're standing on a film set, or maybe inside the collective imagination of the 20th century, where dinosaurs have finally broken free from glass cases and plaster parks. The first thing you notice is the light. Blinding white arcs suspended above a miniature jungle built from papier-mâché and painted ferns. Men in suspenders scurry about, hauling cameras the size of refrigerators. Someone shouts, "Quiet on set!" and suddenly the air stills. A mechanical roar splits the silence. It's tinny, metallic, glorious. From behind a painted backdrop lumbers a rubber-skinned giant on two legs, tail wobbling, eyes unmoving. The director throws up his arms in triumph. You realise you're watching the birth of cinematic prehistory. The Lost World, 1925. The first stop-motion dinosaurs jitter to life under flickering light, their movements painstakingly crafted frame by frame. The model trembles slightly as the animator, Willis O'Brien, adjusts a tiny clay jaw by a fraction of an inch, then steps back. Patience, obsession, and a hint of madness fuel every second. Scientists will later critique the accuracy of these beasts. Historians still argue whether early filmmakers distorted science or democratized it. But sitting here, smelling the celluloid and ozone, you know it's both. Wonder has never cared much for precision. The director calls cut, and the crew exhales collectively. Someone passes you a tin cup of coffee that tastes like burnt optimism. You sip it. Watching the modelled dinosaurs stand motionless between takes, frozen mid-roar, like ghosts waiting for animation's spell to resume. The scene fades and reforms. Now you're in a darkened theatre, velvet seats creaking beneath strangers. The screen flickers to life. Jungles, volcanoes, the shadow of a T, wrecks rising from mist. The audience gasps. A child squeezes her mother's hand. Someone laughs nervously. The illusion works. When the lights come up, you hear murmurs of awe. Imagine if they were real. You smile. You've no idea, you think. The decades whirl forward, the colours sharpen, the sound deepens. Now you're watching the 50s unfold in glorious Technicolor. Drive-ins bloom across America like metallic flowers. On the screens, dinosaurs stomp across desert backdrops, their movements jerky but enthusiastic. Atomic energy, freshly invented and poorly understood, becomes the new magic dust. Radioactive monsters from the dawn of time, posters scream. You stand beside a teenage couple in a convertible as a rubber-suited T-Rex attacks a cardboard skyscraper. They cheer, laugh, throw popcorn. Somewhere behind them, a scientist in a lab coat explains that dinosaurs might still exist at the Earth's core. You glance up at the projected image and whisper to no one, "Not quite." The air hums with the optimism and paranoia of a century in motion. Fossil digs multiply across continents. Mongolia, Argentina, the Badlands of Canada. Each new discovery fuels headlines. New dinosaur unearthed. Bones become celebrity gossip. Museum halls fill with with children clutching toy stegosauruses, parents whispering half-remembered facts. One morning, you find yourself standing on the rim of a real dig. Sun burns against your neck and the scent of dust and sunscreen replaces coal smoke. Grad students crouch over trenches, brushing soil from vertebrae with toothbrushes. Laughter ripples through the air, mingled with the clink of tools. A paleontologist, hat shading his weathered face, looks up and grins. "Every new bone rewrites the story," he says. You nod, watching as a fragile rib emerges from the ground like a slow-motion sunrise. The excitement here feels the same as it did in the Victorian lecture halls, only now the tools are better and the skepticism gentler. The dream has matured without losing its wonder. You close your eyes for a moment, and when you open them again, the dig has morphed into a studio lot. 1993, California heat shimmering off concrete. A mechanical roar echoes from behind towering steel fences. The scent of popcorn returns, but sharper, butterier, artificial. Someone yells, "We're ready for the T-Rex!" And then you see it. Not stop motion, not clay, but steel and hydraulics wrapped in latex, 20 feet tall and wet with fake rain. His jaw opens, revealing teeth slick with glycerin. Animatronics hiss. Lights flash. Nearby, a digital artist stares at a computer monitor, coaxing polygons into muscle. Spielberg's Jurassic Park is being born. And for the first time since the Cretaceous, the dinosaurs move with conviction again. You stand behind the cameras, awed by the choreography. Scientists consulting, artists gesturing wildly, actors screaming on cue. It's absurd and perfect. When the T-Rex steps out of the paddock and roars, even the crew applauds. Later, you sit in another dark theatre, the logo flashing, John Williams' score swelling. The audience gasps as the Brachiosaurus lifts its head toward the sun. A tear slides down the cheek of a child 2 seats away. She whispers, "They're real." For a few heartbeats they are. Scientists debate accuracy again. Too bird-like, not bird-like enough. Where are the feathers? Historians still argue whether cinema distorts truth or simply democratizes awe. But as you watch the screen glow, you understand that the real achievement isn't scientific. It's emotional. The film resurrects not creatures, but curiosity. You exit into night, neon reflecting on puddles, the theme song still echoing in your ears. Posters line the walls, toy tie-ins, museum exhibitions, documentaries. The line between fact and fiction blurs deliciously. Everyone wants a piece of the prehistoric again. You wander through decades as they compress into minutes. Documentaries grow sleeker, computers faster. CGI gives the old bones new breath again and again. Every generation meets its dinosaurs anew, more detailed, more feathered, more real. You find yourself in a modern museum. Glass, light, silence. Children press their faces against displays where holographic dinosaurs prowl through projected forests. A guide gestures through augmented reality glasses. Here's how paleontologists think they sounded. A low rumble fills the air. Even you feel it in your chest. An elderly woman nearby murmurs, "We used to imagine them roaring, now they sing." You walk to a corner exhibit labelled Origins of Paleontology. Inside, beneath perfect lighting, rests that same megalosaurus tooth you first saw behind glass in Victorian London. Its label gleams in sterile print, but the wonder hasn't faded. You lean closer, smiling. "You've been famous longer than most monarchs," you whisper. Someone beside you chuckles. A young boy, maybe 10, peers up and asks, "Did you see the movie?" You grin. "All of them," he nods solemnly. "The new one's got feathers." You laugh softly. "About time." The boy runs off, sneakers squeaking on marble. You stay, letting the museum's quiet hum fill you. It's not silence, really, more like reverence. The same hum that lived in the Victorian lecture halls, in the dig sites, in the stop-motion workshops, in the sound stages. You move toward a window overlooking the city. Outside, skyscrapers glitter, their glass reflecting the sky's last blue. Far below, a bus passes with a giant advertisement plastered along its side, a feathered raptor, mouth open in cinematic defiance. You press your palm against the glass. Below the traffic noise, you swear you can hear it. The heartbeat of deep time still drumming beneath the pavement. The story never ended, it just changed mediums. You turn and glance once more at the museum hall. Light pools around skeletons poised mid-stride, their bones gleaming ivory against shadow. They don't look extinct anymore. They look eternal. You whisper, "See? You made it all the way to the credits." The hum of the world fades into soft applause. Centuries of scientists, dreamers and audiences clapping in unison for the same impossible cast. The lights dim, the projector flickers. Somewhere in the distance thunder rumbles, not warning this time but encore. The curtain of time ripples and the next act waits beyond it. The applause fades into a low electronic hum, a different kind of heartbeat. Steady, sterile, mechanical. The air no longer smells of dust or popcorn or rain, but of disinfectant and ozone. You open your eyes and find yourself in a laboratory bathed in white light so pure it hurts. Rows of stainless steel tables gleam like mirrors. Transparent tanks line the walls, each filled with pale fluid of ice and floating samples that could be anything. Scales, feathers, strands of tissue trembling in suspension. You move quietly, the rubber soles of your shoes whispering against the floor. Monitors pulse softly, displaying scrolling DNA sequences. Green, blue, yellow. A digital language that humankind has learned to read but not yet to respect. A machine nearby exhales in rhythmic puffs. Oxygenating a specimen you can't quite see, the faint smell of ammonia rides the air like a warning. A young scientist in a white coat passes you without noticing, eyes fixed on a tablet. His name tag reads De Vega. His expression is focused, reverent, almost devout. He stops beside a large glass cylinder at the center of the room and types something on his screen. Bubbles rise in the tank. Inside, a dark shape stirs. You step closer. The outline becomes clear, a small embryo curled and motionless, veins like threads of silver. Its shape is unmistakable. The long jaw, the stubby forelimbs, the promise of a tail, a dinosaur, or at least the idea of one. You whisper, "You've got to be kidding me." Dr. Vega hears the sound, but doesn't look up. "Phase 3, he murmurs. "We've almost mapped the full genome." You glance at the monitors. Fragments of letters flicker across the screen. A, T, C, G, millions of them, arranged like the ancient code of life itself. Spliced between them are human numbers, annotations, timestamps. Science has turned resurrection into a spreadsheet. You remember a time when life needed meteors or miracles to reinvent itself. Now it needs only curiosity and arrogance in equal measure. Scientists will later call this de-extinction. Historians still argue whether it's innovation or heresy. Standing here, watching the embryo twitch faintly in its amniotic light, you suspect it's both. Dr. Vega taps the glass with a fingernail. "You know," he says as if to himself, "they said we shouldn't, that it wasn't ethical, but if we can, shouldn't we?" You want to answer, but the words lodge in your throat. The hum of machines grows louder, blending into something like the rumble of thunder, the echo of creation replaying into a controlled environment. A door hisses open behind you. Another scientist enters, older, his face lined with exhaustion. Dr. Klein, according to his badge. He carries a clipboard, the last artifact of an age before tablets. "Vega," he says, voice low, "we're not gods. We're accountants trying to balance entropy." "And accountants keep records," Vega replies, not unkindly. "We just want to see the ledger before it's lost." You back away from the tank, unsettled. The embryo's shadow sways faintly in the fluid, as if caught between two worlds. You wander through adjoining rooms, specimen freezers, sequencing stations, microscopes humming softly in rows. Each hum is the same note played at a different frequency. Through a window you glimpse another lab. Larger, darker. Silhouettes of creatures move behind frosted glass, too large, too slow. Your breath fogs the pain. A low sound comes from beyond the wall, a vibration you feel in your ribs more than hear. It's not human, not entirely animal either. A sound born of algorithms and arrogance. You turn away. In the corridor, posters line the walls. Sleek renderings of dinosaurs walking through modern forests, humans standing beside them with placid smiles. Slogans read, "Science brings them home," and "Nature reimagined." One corner bears the logo of a biotech corporation, all polished fonts and moral greyness. The hallway leads to a conference room filled with people in suits. They speak in low tones, words like viability, patents, public relations. On a large screen behind them, a holographic embryo rotates slowly. Annotated with graphs and numbers, you stand unseen at the back listening. "Public sentiment is shifting," one woman says. "They're calling it blasphemy." "Blasphemy sells," another replies. "We're not reviving monsters, we're restoring balance. We're caretakers." Someone chuckles. "Caretakers who charge admission." The group laughs softly. The sound chills you more than the sterile air. You glance at the glass wall separating the room from the lab. On the other side, the embryo's tank pulses faintly. Bubbles shimmer like nervous thoughts. "What happens if it hatches?" you ask aloud, though no one seems to hear. The woman near the screen answers, as if to herself, "Then we'll have to decide if it's an animal or a miracle." You leave the room before the debate resumes. Outside, the lab's doors open automatically, spilling you into a night that smells of rain and distant soil. Lightning flickers across the horizon, silhouetting a line of trees that seem older than everything inside that building. You walk toward them, shoes sinking into damp ground. The rain begins softly, then harder, washing the sterile taste of the lab from your tongue. You tilt your face upward, letting it soak your hair, your clothes. Above the thunder, you hear another sound, an echo maybe, or a memory, the roar of something ancient carried on the wind. You can't tell if it's real or just your conscience. In the distance, the lab's lights glow like a small sun, artificial and defiant. You imagine the scientists inside peering through glass at the flickering embryo, convinced they're saviors. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. You remember what it felt like to touch fossils, to feel the texture of time under your fingers. This feels different, colder. The line between reverence and control has blurred. You wander through the trees until the glow of the facility fades behind you. The forest hums with rain and distant thunder. Somewhere an owl calls. Life, the unengineered kind, goes about its business, unbothered by human ambitions. You crouch beneath a broadleaf tree and rest your palms against the wet soil. It's cool, uneven, filled with roots that twist and pulse faintly. Here is the code no lab can replicate. The language of decay, renewal, unpredictability. You whisper, this is how you do it. Quietly. The storm swells, thunder rolling closer. Flashes of lightning reveal the curve of the hills, the shimmer of puddles, the slow crawl of mist across the ground. For a moment, you think you see a shape move through it, a silhouette too large, too familiar, gliding between flashes of light. You hold your breath, but when the next bolt strikes, it's gone. Only wind and trees remain. Scientists will later debate whether de-extinction succeeded or whether it merely created illusions, hybrids without true lineage. Historians still argue whether the attempt itself was hubris or hope. Watching the storm wash over the new century, you think maybe it was a little of both. Rain soaks your sleeves. Thunder mutters its final warning. The lab's hum fades entirely behind the rhythm of nature reclaiming dominance. You stand, soaked and shivering, and look up into the night sky where lightning traces brief hieroglyphs of power. It's the same energy that once split continents, the same fire that birthed stars. No genome can bottle that. You turn back toward the facility one last time. Its lights blink faintly through the storm, small and human and fragile. Inside, someone is still watching the embryo, still believing in control. You whisper to the wind, careful what you wake. The thunder answers with a long, low growl that sounds almost like laughter. You smile, rain running down your face, and walk deeper into the forest, where the soil is still honest and life writes its code without witnesses. Morning comes slow and clean after the storm, the air sharp with petrichor and the faint sweetness of blooming clover. You wake beneath the dripping leaves, wrapped in the hush that follows thunder. The forest glistens as if rinsed of arrogance. Droplets slide from branches, gathering sunlight until the whole canopy seems to shimmer with forgiveness. The world feels newly minted again, fragile, curious, alive. You stretch, your joints popping softly, and for a heartbeat you think you hear an echo inside your own body, a distant rhythm, something older than your name. Your pulse quickens, syncing with the rustle of leaves and the hum of unseen insects. It feels familiar, almost ancestral. You start walking toward the clearing, where the first beams of daylight pierce the mist. Birds call from every direction, overlapping melodies of whistles, trills, and staccato clicks. One lands on a low branch just ahead of you, a small brown sparrow, feathers still ruffled from the rain. It tilts its head, eyes bright with the same ancient calculation you've seen before. You smile. "You're late to the family reunion," you whisper. The bird flutters closer, unbothered, and lets out a short, sharp chirp that feels more like a retort than a greeting. It hops once, twice, and spreads its wings. For an instant, when the sunlight hits its feathers, you see the shimmer of scales beneath the sheen, the fossil memory of armor disguised as beauty. Scientists will later confirm what your eyes already know. Every sparrow, crow, and eagle carries within it the blueprints of the Cretaceous. Historians still argue whether calling birds dinosaurs diminishes their miracle or enhances it. Watching this tiny survivor preen on a branch, you decide it's the best kind of both. The sparrow takes flight, vanishing into the green. Your eyes follow its path until it's swallowed by light. You keep walking, noticing details you might have missed before. The curve of a fern's frond echoing the tail of a diplodocus. The ridged bark of a pine tree that looks suspiciously like the imprint of reptilian skin. The world hasn't forgotten its teachers, it's just rearranged their lessons. You stop at a shallow stream and kneel to drink. The water is cold, sweet, alive. Your reflection stares back at you, mud-streaked, tired, undeniably human. Yet as the ripples settle, you catch glimpses of something else in your own face. Your skin flushes faintly, like the colour signals of a chameleon. Your breath comes in slow, measured huffs, the rhythm instinctive and ancient. You remember reading once that your inner ear still curves like that of a reptile, that the tendons in your hand flex with the same elegance as a theropod's claw. You flex your fingers underwater, imagining the lineage that stretches backward through bone and muscle, through time and adaptation. You aren't just descended from survivors, you're one of them. You sit back on your heels, watching the stream flow over stone smoothed by centuries. Each ripple carries particles of mountain and fossil, mingling them with the dust of modern cities downstream. It's all circulation, extinction, feeding, evolution, feeding life. A rustle draws your attention to the opposite bank. A heron stands there, motionless but alert, neck poised like a question mark. It waits, then strikes, fast, efficient, beautiful. The fish vanishes down its throat in one fluid motion. When it lifts its head, water droplets glisten on its feathers, and for a second you see the echo of a velociraptor's profile. Same eyes, same calculation. You whisper, "I see you," and the heron blinks, unamused, before spreading its wings. The wind from its takeoff brushes your face, cool and soft, like the turn of a page. You follow the stream until it opens into a meadow where the grass sways in long, slow waves. Butterflies dance above it, tiny iridescent flecks of life, and bees hum so low it almost sounds like chanting. Somewhere behind you, a woodpecker drums against a hollow trunk, the ancient heartbeat of persistence. You walk barefoot now, toes sinking into the damp earth. It feels good to remember that this body of yours, this so-called modern architecture, was built from ancient blueprints. Your spine curves the way it does because a fish once learned to crawl. Your lungs inhale because reptilian sacs learned to drink air. Even the calcium in your bones once belonged to coral reefs and seashells. You are an archive pretending to be a person. You look up at the sky. A hawk circles high above, coasting on thermals. Its wings tilt slightly, adjusting, ancient instincts playing through modern grace. As it dips, its cry pierces the morning, sharp, declarative, and utterly prehistoric. The sound sends a shiver through you. Scientists have compared avian lungs to the ventilatory systems of theropods, marvelling at the efficiency of design evolution refused to discard. Historians still argue whether birds remember their lineage consciously, or if instinct alone carries memory. You close your eyes and listen to that cry again, convinced that on some molecular level, the hawk knows exactly who it is. You wander deeper into the meadow until you reach a cluster of rocks that look almost sculpted. One of them bears faint grooves, parallel lines etched by time or perhaps by teeth. You touch them, tracing their rhythm. The stone is warm from the sun. In that warmth you feel the continuity of all carbon-based arrogance, the persistence of life's patterns, the refusal of the old to truly die. Every molecule in your blood, every fragment of DNA hums with repetition. You sit cross-legged, eyes closed, and breathe in sync with the world around you. The air smells of wildflowers and wet soil. Your chest rises and falls. Beneath your ribs, your heart thumps its steady percussive reminder. Still here, your mind drifts. For a moment, the edges of your consciousness blur, and you see flashes, images like fossils in motion, scales turning to feathers, claws curving into fingers, a reptile's hiss softening into a mammal's sigh. Time compresses until the boundary between species collapses. You open your eyes. The meadow seems brighter now, the colours sharper. A gust of wind sweeps through, bending the grass like a ripple of breath. You stand, letting it pass through you. You walk again, uphill this time, toward a ridge that offers a view of the horizon. The climb is slow, but the air grows cooler, thinner, cleaner. At the top, you stop to catch your breath and look out. Below stretches an endless mosaic of forests, rivers, and light. Birds spiral in lazy currents. In the far distance, smoke curls upward, perhaps from a village, perhaps from memory. The world looks both ancient and brand new, as if evolution itself is exhaling. You lift your arms slightly, feeling your shoulders roll and shift. And in that moment, you can almost feel wings, ghost wings, unfurling from somewhere deep inside your muscles, It's not flight you want, not really. It's recognition. You close your eyes and listen to your own pulse again. It's not just your heart. It's the echo of every ancestor that refused to stop moving, every creature that ran, crawled, flew, or swam toward the next sunrise. The rhythm builds until it feels like the earth is matching it beat for beat. You whisper, "We never left." A breeze carries your words away, scattering them across the landscape. When you open your eyes, a flock of starlings sweeps past, their movements so synchronized they might be one organism. They twist, turn, fold upon themselves, forming shapes that look like clouds remembering they were once oceans. You watch until the last bird disappears into distance, a dark smear against a pale sky. You exhale slowly. You feel the weight of deep time settle gently in your chest, not as burden, but as belonging. Everything you are is borrowed from everything that was. You crouch, press your hand into the earth and whisper, "Thank you." The soil is warm, and something beneath it, root, worm, pulse, answers faintly in return. And for the first time since you began this dream, you don't feel like a visitor. You feel like a continuation. The ridge is quiet now. The wind has eased into a sigh that drifts through the grass like a final verse hummed under its breath. You stand there for a while, letting the world breathe around you. The rustle of leaves, the faint hum of insects, the low heartbeat of the soil beneath your feet. All the noise of history has thinned to a whisper. The storms have passed, the fires have cooled, the thunder lizards have dissolved into memory, and yet the planet still feels awake, eyes half open, murmuring in its sleep. You start walking downhill, your shadow stretching long behind you. The slope is soft, carpeted with moss and small yellow flowers that glow faintly in the dimming light. The air is thick with the scent of wet stone and new pollen. You follow a narrow trail that winds between boulders etched with lichen, each patch the slow-motion clock measuring centuries instead of seconds. As you walk, the light shifts from gold to amber to the soft bruised purple of dusk. A single star pricks through the haze above you, and then another. The sky begins to fill, one pinprick at a time, until it looks like the same ancient ceiling you saw when you first drifted into this dream. Only now you recognize the pattern. The constellations aren't new, they've just learned to wear different names. You pause beside a stream that trickles between rocks, its surface glimmering with the reflections of those newborn stars. Kneeling, you cup your hands and drink. The water is cold and faintly metallic, tasting of iron and root. It slides down your throat like a promise you don't quite understand. Somewhere upstream, a frog croaks, a sound older than every language combined. Another answers, and then another, until the air vibrates with a sleepy rhythm. You smile. Even now, the chorus of the survivors continues its rehearsal. You find a patch of flat ground and sit. The earth feels warm from the day's sun, still holding the ghost of its heat. You stretch out your legs, lean back on your hands, and look at the horizon. A faint orange line glows there, the last breath of daylight lingering like an afterthought. You close your eyes and listen. The sounds layer over one another. The whisper of wind through grass, the distant murmur of water, the slow exhale of your own breath. For a moment, you can't tell where you end and the landscape begins. You think about the creatures who once ruled this place, the giants who thundered through forests, the hunters who sang in teeth and speed, the feathered dreamers who learned to taste the sky. They've gone to dust, yes, but their echoes remain stitched into every living thing. Every step you take, every breath you draw, is a footnote in their story. Scientists will later say that 99% of all species that ever lived are extinct. Historians still argue whether that number is tragedy or inevitability. Sitting here, you understand it's simply the mathematics of wonder. Life never stops writing, it just changes its handwriting. The stars brighten, and a soft breeze slides across your skin. You lie back on the ground, feeling the texture of the soil beneath you, the fine grit, the hidden roots, the quiet pulse that never quite went silent. Somewhere deep below, tectonic plates continue their slow conversation, shifting continents by centimeters, reshaping futures no one will ever see. You trace a finger through the dirt, drawing a lazy spiral. It looks like the swirl of a galaxy, the curl of a seashell, the pattern in a fern's frond, and all the same geometry repeated from cell to cosmos. The universe has always loved its own handwriting too, You whisper to no one. It never really ends, does it? The wind answers with a gentle rustle, bending the grass around you in concentric waves. It sounds almost like laughter, the kind you hear from someone who knows more than they're willing to explain. A shooting star streaks across the sky, brief and bright, its tail dissolving into silver dust. It reminds you of the first meteor, the one that ended everything and began everything else. But this one feels kinder, a quiet punctuation mark at the end of a long sentence. You inhale deeply, letting the cool night air fill your lungs. The taste of iron fades, replaced by the faint sweetness of wildflowers. Somewhere, an owl hoots, a sound shaped by millions of years of adaptation, perfected by persistence. Your eyes grow heavy. The rhythm of the stream and the hum of insects weave together into a lullaby older than civilization. Your heartbeat slows to match it. You lie perfectly still, watching clouds drift lazily across the stars. They look like slow-moving continents, their edges glowing faintly with moonlight. The moon itself hangs low, enormous and pale, its face streaked with the memory of craters left by forgotten collisions. You think about all the worlds that came before, the volcanic dawns, the lush jungles, the fiery extinctions, the quiet rebirths. You think about the Victorians with their hammers and lanterns, the filmmakers with their cameras, the scientists with their code, and the small mammals with their endless stubbornness. Every age had its dreamers and its survivors. You've been both. You reach out and scoop a handful of soil. It sticks to your fingers, cool and fragrant. You rub it between your palms until it becomes a fine powder that drifts away on the wind. You watch it scatter, knowing some of those particles once belonged to things that roared, swam, flew, or bloomed. Maybe some of them will settle somewhere new, planting the next idea, the next breath, the next world. The wind grows gentler still. The stars pulse faintly, as if dimming, to match your slowing heartbeat. Everything narrows to the small circle of your breathing, the steady rhythm of the earth beneath you. You close your eyes, feeling gravity cradle you like an old friend. You whisper one last thought into the soil, "Thank you for the story." The ground hums softly in response, a vibration more felt than heard. The pulse of continents, the echo of oceans, the murmur of roots and stones and time itself. You imagine the dinosaurs at rest beneath your palms, their bones turned to crystal, their names dissolved into myth, their spirits diffused into every living cell. They are the earth now, and so are you. The air cools as night deepens. Dew forms on your skin, tiny jewels that catch the moonlight. Your breath slows, matching the rhythm of the world's sleep. And then, as if on cue, the wind shifts. It carries the faintest scent of salt and fern, of rain not yet fallen. The planet turns beneath you, slow and sure, wrapping you in its gravity like a blanket. You exhale one last conscious breath. The stars fade slightly as if dimming the lights for the closing act. And the earth, gentle and ancient, begins to hum you to sleep. The world softens into murmurs now, and your thoughts loosen their grip. The edges between memory and dream blur like watercolour in rain. The air feels thicker, quieter, as if the planet itself is tiptoeing so you can rest. The rhythm that carried you through lava, forests, thunder, and silence now slows into something tender, an old melody without words. You can still feel the pulse of life beneath you, steady and patient. The same pulse that once drove herds across plains, lifted wings into dawn and stirred leaves in prehistoric wind. It hasn't changed, not really. It's only learned to whisper instead of roar. The night drapes over you like velvet, warm and cool in turns. Stars shimmer through your eyelids, distant and kind. The air hums faintly with the sound of soil settling, of water finding its path, of the slow, eternal breathing of the sleeping earth. Every sound becomes softer, every thought more forgiving. You let go of centuries one by one, the bright Triassic curiosity of Victorian dreamers, the roar of cinematic beasts, the sterile hum of laboratories, the gentle flutter of sparrows at dawn. All of them fold neatly into stillness, becoming the hush before sleep. Your body feels lighter, as though gravity itself has grown gentle with you. The warmth beneath your back seeps upward, comforting, familiar. Your heartbeat slows again, each thud a soft knock on the door between waking and whatever comes next. The last sound you hear is the whisper of wind through grass, tracing your name into the night, and when even that fades, only peace remains, an endless exhale shared between you and the sleeping earth.